All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us a special guest, a man of excellence, a man that is very dedicated and disciplined to his craft. He is a Marine, a Green Beret, specializes in, well, honestly, what does he not specialize in? Please welcome Kawa Mawlayee. Kawa, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Appreciate you asking me to jump on this podcast of yours. Happy to be here. This is our first one, so
True.
we probably. I don't know. You might have me at an advantage,
And hopefully
but,
many more, but yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully many more. But excited to be here, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I saw you talking about not only your experience in the military and a few of your reels, because I was scrolling through your Instagram. And what I noticed straight away is that you always get to the point. And I wanted to sort of put you on skates, and I want to see how you feel about, I guess, the certain context and the certain types of, the certain types of concepts I want to talk to you about, whether it comes to America, our military interventions. Where do we go from here, if that makes sense? So I know that you have an Afghan background. Did you grow up in a Muslim family?
I did, yeah. My entire family's Afghan. We immigrated from Afghanistan during the height of the Soviet invasion in '79. We actually left in '81. Came to Lincoln, Nebraska, grew up there, went to college. Yes, my entire family is Muslim, but my entire family comes from Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. Our lineage goes back there centuries. So I've always have hung on pretty tight to my Afghan culture, but also my religion and being Muslim.
And it's really interesting to me because when I'm Christian, right, I don't know a lot about Islam, but whether it's Fox News or any sort of right-wing Republican news anchor or news station or even left, it's always about creating propaganda. They separating blacks and whites, separating Muslims and Christians. I think a good example of Jews causing problems, you could even trace it back to 711 AD, right, in Toledo, Spain, when Muslim raiders came in. But they only came in because Jews let them in.
Well, it wasn't just the Jewish diaspora that were being oppressed.
Yeah.
It was actually the Spanish, the Spanish leadership at the time also asked for help because there was a lot of kind of battling feuds in Spain at the time. You had who was in control, which I forget his name, but then you had opposition groups, and then you had the persecution of Jewish people. But we have to also talk about why they were persecuted.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, it's not like they were just being picked on. They obviously did something.
Due to usury, coin clipping, the sacrifices.
Right, to get to that persecution. But then it was the Muslims that were invited in to mediate and also kind of come de-escalate things. And when the Muslims came in at that point, they did such a good job that the entirety of Spain kind of adopted Islam and the Islamic culture, the traditions. They started dressing like Arabs for centuries.
Oh yeah.
So it goes further back than that, obviously. But
yeah.
You brought up Spain. I just wanted to get a little context there.
Oh, absolutely. There's more. I'm not trying to paint anyone or radicalize or create tension. But what I'm saying is that Christians can say it's the Muslims, but I'm like, well, how did the Muslims come in? Jewish people did let in Muslim. You know what I mean? Muslims in.
Yeah, it's easy to say that the Muslims invaded Spain and
but how'd they get in?
It was a conquest and it was, but in reality, you have to understand what was happening in Spain
in that time period
for however much time before the Muslims were invited in. Okay, it's not that they just decided, hey, let's go raid this island or whatever, but they were invited.
No, I agree.
For diplomatic reasons, for military reasons, for diplomatic, it was like a mediation, really. But it was a successful mediation. So people need to understand the context because it's so easy for people to say,
"Oh, the Muslims, oh, the Jews, oh, the that."
Raided and they conquest and they killed and they converted, and it's like, no, that's actually none of that really happened. I'm not saying that never happened. I'm just saying when it came to Spain, that's not what happened.
No, I agree because I'm not saying that, hey, you guys came in and destroyed and pillaged. There were moments where there were feuds between Christians and Muslims, but there were also societies where Christians and Muslims got along. Like, for example, in Palestine, for hundreds of years, they trusted a Muslim family to the keys of that church in Jerusalem, right? So,
well, I would say for it's more than a hundred or a couple hundred years. I would
generations.
say that it's probably, I think the two churches that the Muslim families hold the keys to, I believe, they're about 400 or 500 years that's been passed on, and maybe in fact more than that. But yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that's a great example of how there is so much cohesion in Palestine between Christians, Muslims, and Jews before the inception of Israel.
Yeah, because every time I feel like there was a period where they tried to get an agreement, there was always like a third party that got in the way, right? So, and it's very interesting to me because I look at Albania, right? They're, regardless of being Christian or Muslim, they're always going to be Albanian, right? They're always going to be Balkan. Nothing gets in the way of that. And even today, like for example, when you talked about Muslims that came in to Spain, there are people that are Christian that have Muslim ancestors who are North African, right? People that do have Moroccan and Tunisian and possibly other like admixtures. But when I want to sort of, I guess, like discuss or talk about was during that time period when Jews were kicked out, Muslims let them in, right? During 1492, during, I guess, Spain's like golden era, when they came to North Africa, specifically areas like Tunisia, Morocco, I'm pretty sure Libya, not exactly sure if it was mainly Libya, but it was mainly Tunisia and Morocco. I know a lot of Sephardic Jews came into and settled and made communities, even in Algeria, I think. Yeah, Algeria. It was Muslims that always let them in when Christians kicked them out. Even Albanians let in Jews, right? The Ottoman Empire, under them, I think they thrived the most under the Ottoman Empire. I think Jews.
I mean, the Ottoman Empire was probably the biggest empire in our existence.
Mankind, yeah.
But when your empire gets that big, it's also, you lose a little bit of security, you lose a little bit of trust, and you know what I mean, some loyalty, especially on the perimeters. And then you have outside actors that are fearing the Ottoman Empire, right? Like Western kind of societies. But you know, when we talk about the Ottoman Empire, the purpose of World War I was really to break up the Ottoman Empire, you know, so because it was such a threat to the Western civilizations like the U.S. and Great Britain that we couldn't let we couldn't let these Arabs stay united, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the start of it all. World War I was really the start of the destabilization of the Middle East.
Yeah, even in because I know at that point the Ottoman Empire owned Tunisia, the Ottoman Empire owned what is now Palestine, but even like Palestine, like the word itself existed since like the 5th century, and they've had lineages. Like another example, 1948, after, I think it was when Harry Truman had the Displaced Peoples Act, right? We saw a bunch of Jewish refugees that came into Palestine. And I think the British owned it. That's where the Balfour Declaration and the Rothschilds, you know, sort of signed off on that. You notice that it's always they bite the hand that feeds them. Every single time when Muslims showed hospitality, Jews were like, hey, we are promised to this land. And I'm like, hold on a second. Because when you look at the ancient Israelites and modern Israelis, they're different. Not only genetically, but years and years. Like, these modern Jews couldn't even name what tribe they are, you know, which of the 12 tribes. Now, then again, I understand they were dispersed and went all over the world, but the question is, why were they kicked out? The question is...
Well, then the real question is, you know, why are DNA tests in Israel illegal?
Yeah, you need a court order.
Why do you need a court order to do a DNA test? If you guys say you're part of the 12 tribes and you've been here for 4,000 years, then show us.
What is there to hide?
Don't they want to boast about that?
Yeah, you know, and when you look at Palestinians, they descend from Canaanites and many different types of Semites. Honestly, Palestinians even have ancient Israelite ancestors as well, right? So they're closer to that land and share different types of DNA from the Levant through that region, you know, whether it's Edomites, the Canaanites, the Israelites. There are even people that are Aramean and Phoenician, even Lebanese people who are Phoenician or of other groups, even partly Canaanite as well.
All Semitic groups.
Yeah. Numerous. So it makes you start to question when you look at Ashkenazis and Sephardics, they're not native to the Middle East, you know? So it's really interesting because they'll say, hey, we're God's chosen people, but a lot of Ashkenazi Jews will be atheist. I remember I made a video where I was talking to an Israeli, and I said, you say you're God's chosen people? He's like, yeah. I'm like, but you're an atheist. You know, you don't even believe in God, so what do you mean you're God's chosen people? What God do you believe in, and what God are you talking about? You know, so that's something that always, I guess, puzzled me because I ask questions. Maybe that's why people don't like me. You know, I even like with Turkish people, they don't like me either. Because I'll ask, I'm like, well, you guys are mixed. She's blonde and she looks more Mediterranean. She has black curly hair. Are you guys part Greek? Fuck you. And I'm like, well, you're part Greek. Everyone that Turkish people hate, they're genetically related to. And that's just the truth. You know, I'm not trying to hate on Turkish people, but it's really interesting. Same with Israelis. When I talk about DNA or when I talk about lineage, they have no idea. Like, I remember my old job when I was talking to someone, I asked, are you Sephardic? She was like, yeah, I'm Sephardic. I'm like, are you like Tunisian or Moroccan? Because, you know, they tend to either come from the Iberian Peninsula, whether it's Portugal or Spain, or like, you know, communities in Morocco or Tunisia. She's like, oh, I'm Tunisian. Oh, I'm Moroccan. I'm like, okay, you're Jewish. What type of Amazi group do you come from, right? Because you're part Moroccan. Are you Rif? Are you from any of the other areas? What is that? You know what I mean? They don't have any idea of what they actually are. And like from a genetic standpoint, Jewish people are very ethnically ambiguous. But the thing is, when I've talked to people that are Israeli, they get so bothered and annoyed. I'm like, you guys do know you guys are like mutts, right? No, we're not. I'm Jewish. I'm like, well, yeah, Jews mix with different people over time. You know what I mean? Like, that's like saying when people say, hey, I'm Turkish, they're probably Armenian, Italian, Mongolian, Greek, Macedonian. The list goes on. You know, they're not specifically one set of people, but it just bothers them, the fact that there could be something else. They're like, no, I'm not. I'm like, why are you disgusted by that? You even said yourself, you're a Moroccan Jew. You're going to be partly Moroccan, partly Spaniard. It was a Spanish colony. You guys mixed with different people.
They want to conflate. They want to conflate their so-called religion with their so-called ethnicity. You know.
Yes. Yeah. It's a race. It's a religion. It's an ethnicity.
They have to acknowledge that they're somewhere from Europe.
Yeah.
You know, and if they say, "Well, I'm Jewish," well, are you Jewish religion-wise, or are you Jewish ethnicity-wise? Because there is no Jewish ethnicity.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the mixed breed that you're talking about. Is you can't claim that you're a Jewish ethnicity because you still come from somewhere.
Yeah, some land, some place,
so,
somewhere.
But they do that for a reason. They do that for a reason to drive in your head that because they're Jewish, that Jewish ethnicity, that would imply that they are from the Levant or from Palestine itself.
True.
So it's a strategy that they have adopted for a long time, and that's what they kind of base themselves around.
It's kind of like in their genetic coding.
You have to separate. You know, we can't sit here and say Jews, because there's a lot of good Jews in this world. There's a lot of good Jews in America. We have to isolate the bad ones, and primarily the type of people that run the government of Israel are the type of people that we are talking about. Those are not Jews. They don't believe in God. Real Jews believe in God.
And in the Torah and in its teachings.
These are the atheists. They're Zionists. These are Zionists. And most Zionists, Christian and Jewish Zionists,
absolutely,
are atheists. They don't believe in God.
They use their God as a scapegoat.
Yeah, they use their God as a scapegoat and a victim card if they get scrutinized too heavily. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
But in reality, we have to isolate the Zionists away from the good Jewish
like the Talmudic Jews compared to like people that follow the Torah.
We can't say Jews because Jews is everybody. That's like me saying all Muslims are terrorists. We can't
absolutely.
do that because that would make me a hypocrite. So there's a lot of good Jews in the world, and we see that. We don't just hear about them. We see them. In New York, they protest all the time. They hold up Palestinian flags. In Tel Aviv, they're protesting their government all the time because even though they may be okay with what's happening in Gaza, they're not okay with Iran and Lebanon, Hezbollah, Yemen, Houthis dropping bombs on them, right?
Oh, I agree.
So you have all these Jewish people in Israel that are fed up with their government because it's like you guys,
and even ostracized from their own communities.
Because now we're being targeted because of your actions. So yes, there are good Jewish people in the world. I would say maybe even the majority of them are good. But then you have the Zionists who are actual atheists, but conflate the religion with their identity to, again, gain favor and sympathy.
No, I agree. And my goal isn't to create division between hate or division between Jews, Muslims, and Christians, but I will look at the stats, right? A lot of Jews are Zionists. I'm not saying all are horrible people. If you believe Jewish people should have a homeland, I don't mind if they have a homeland as long as other people don't get hurt in that process. But it has been a messy process. It has been a lot of false flag operations over and over that have affected the lives of majority Muslim communities and even Christian communities as well. And I am conflicted because you look at Avner Cohen, right, for an ex-Israeli politician who admitted that Hamas was funded by Israel, right? You look at Al-Qaeda, and that was created by America. You look at ISIS, and even like in Epstein files where it talked about how it was an asset to America. So it gets one thinking.
And Israel.
Yeah, and Israel. You know, you look at how ISIS has attacked these Muslim areas, but hey, ISIS hates Jews. Why haven't they attacked Israel, right? Now, a lot of people are going to make the argument and say, hey, well, Israel's military isn't really that good. They just get a lot of funding from many countries. You know, like when you look at the IDF, it's like a fat guy, a skinny dork at the park. These people don't know how to fight. Like when you really look at the whole demographic, like they're not like mountain men like people in Iran or Afghanistan. Like they're not actual fighters, killers, ready. They just have, you know, they're just like kids that play Call of Duty.
They're literally keyboard warriors.
Literally, yeah.
They drop bombs and fly drones from an air-conditioned office. Every time they do a ground invasion or a ground assault in Gaza, they get their asses handed to them by resistance fighters. Every time they do a ground invasion in Lebanon, they get their asses handed to them by Hezbollah. They've never known what a real fight looks like. And if maybe they joined us in Afghanistan once or twice, maybe if they actually sent a couple of troops to Iraq to help us because they are our greatest ally, but where is your military support? Yeah. Then maybe they would have got some combat experience. But no, man, they're trigger happy, bomb happy, and they know nothing about fighting on the ground.
And it's really
other than just shooting people indiscriminately.
And shooting kids, you know, but
yeah.
It's really weird because like when I saw like videos of the IDF and I'm like, these people don't have any strategy, right? You look at the precision airstriking, because I was back to when I was debating the Israeli kid. I said, look, but I'm like, that's a fucking kid. What do you mean he's gonna be a soldier? You know, not all of these kids are like these wild sand niggers that blow people up. No, the reason why they're radicalized is because it's like putting a dog in a cage and starving it. It's gonna bite back, right? So people don't realize that these are children. I don't give a fuck if they're Muslim, Christian, or Jewish. I don't want to see kids die.
The analogy is easy. Let's take a neighborhood here in America, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's New Jersey, whether it's Texas, it doesn't matter. But let's say that you and your family have been living in this neighborhood,
God knows how long,
in this area for centuries. Okay, all of a sudden you got a bunch of people that come from a different continent onto your land, who then the Israeli government gives firearms to, and then now you have a bunch of people on your land saying, "This house is ours now. This house is ours." The land is ours, and you gotta go, right? So, and you're like, man, that's fucked up. I don't want to leave. My family's been here for centuries.
God knows how long, yeah.
And now you guys are coming in trying to steal my land and trying to kill my people. How long would you, Dylan, if that happened to you, how long would you just sit there and take that before you rose up and
their asses are getting kicked straight out of my house. I'm not playing that shit.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Okay, so now imagine Palestinians having to deal with this for 80 plus years.
And so more, right?
This is a true. What I'm about to tell you is a true defined thing in the military and overall strategy, is that oppression in any dynamic, in any scenario environment, by any party, oppression will always breed resistance. You oppress me long enough, hard enough, I will get to a place where I say, well, if nobody else is coming to help me, then I'm going to pick up whatever I have and I'm going to fight back.
Absolutely.
Okay,
fending off your land.
Because I'm the little guy and you're the big guy, right, coming in, you have all the friends, you have all the money, you have all the media, the influence, you have the narrative.
The social media control.
Are you going to call me resistance, or are you going to call me terrorists?
Well, you're going to be called terrorists and nigger savages, and then you're going to be portrayed to the media.
If you call me a resistance, then people say, well, wait a minute, what are they resisting?
Against. Because the narrative is like, hey, they don't. Yeah. The narrative is.
The door open for sympathy and support at that point. But if you call me a terrorist, you're like, whoa, I don't want anything to do with that guy.
I don't want to be associated with that. And
Yeah,
that's
so they have to paint Palestinians as terrorists. They have to. Anything less than labeling them as terrorists leaves a margin of error for questions and digging into, like, you know what I mean, like investing.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It despite all the history that Muslims and Jews have shared, and even now there are many Muslim communities. Even Rabbi Shmuley, that dirty kike dildo rabbi. I can't stand that motherfucker, man. But
dildo rabbi.
yeah, literally. And I mean, he's selling that shit with his daughter. He was twerking on his grandkid. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with that inbred retard, but like literally.
He's a true infidel, bro. Like, that's the definition of an infidel. He's an atheist that doesn't believe in God. Therefore, he's not Christian. He's not Jew. He's not Muslim. He's an atheist.
I can't stand that dick face, man. But especially
it's a perfect example of hiding behind Judaism to pull out the victim card. Perfect example.
And that's what's weird, man. He's kind of like a bipolar ex-girlfriend you can't get rid of. Because like when I look at his videos, 1 second he's saying, oh, in 1492, back in the golden era of Spain, during Catholic Spain, the Muslims let us in. I'm like, look at what you say about Muslims. Okay, they've helped your ancestors, but look at how you talk about them. Look at how you treat them and how you view them. You know what I mean? And it's always playing victim and hiding behind, oy vey. You know what I mean? You got Silver Coinstein over here. But I don't understand, like, why. Like, I mean, I understand why, right? But, like, these are the same people that literally they talk about, well, history has treated us. I'm like, well, actually look at history and see what you've done with the King David Hotel. With the situation in Libya with the ISIS commander, he was a Mossad agent, right? Now, are the Muslim countries the things that they do I don't agree with? Who gives a fuck about what the Muslim countries do? I'm worried about my country, America. 34 states in America, child marriage is legal. That's a fucking problem. You know what I mean? We don't talk about that. Oh, but when Muhammad and Abdul, I don't give a fuck about Muhammad and Abdul. I'm worried about me.
Wait. So what you're talking about is this ignorant hypocrisy.
Exactly.
It's not educated hypocrisy, because who's educated that's going to be a hypocrite? Like, they wouldn't. You and I are not going to be hypocrites today.
Absolutely.
But what you have is this uneducated level of ignorance and hypocrisy that, I mean, did Americans know that 35 states still allow child marriages? Did Americans know that there's been 300,000 child marriages since the year 2000? Did Americans know that there are still states in America that allow the marriages of 13-year-old and younger? Or sorry, 13-year-old, yes, youngest 13-year-old?
They don't.
Americans don't know that. They're so quick to be like, Muhammad, this, Islam, that, but
Abdul,
they
this,
don't even know
that,
what's going on
that.
in their own backyard.
Yeah, and it's a problem, and now terms like America First, anti-Semitic, and you got Ted Cruz. I'm sorry, he's a Jew to me. I might not be able to prove it.
I can prove it to you. He said, quote, that, and I'll paraphrase because I forget the quote, but he said, the sole reason I joined Congress was to support Israel. Just listen to what he says.
What he says.
The sole reason I joined Congress in America is to support Israel.
Basically sell out our country. Yeah.
This is a Canadian who came to America, who's an immigrant, came to America, then somehow rose up in the ranks of Congress, and now he's saying, I'm here for Israel. I'm not here for America.
Listen, man, he sucked off somebody. That's all I got to say. I mean,
well, that's what it is. Listen, when you take AIPAC money, when you take Israeli lobby money, when you take kind of anybody's foreign money, especially Israel's foreign money, when you take AIPAC money, that's it. You're done. Whether you take 100,000, 10,000, a million,
you sold out.
Or in Trump's case, 230 million, right? They expect you to be unconditionally in support of Israel, not just verbally in interviews, but also legislatively with laws and bills. And if you don't, then what happens? What's the consequences of you taking their money but then not supporting them unconditionally?
Well, you'll end up like Charlie Kirk. Yeah.
Your career's done.
Yeah.
It's career suicide.
And
so that's what it is, and that's all of them. But you can't say this is, the right, only the right, it's only the left. No, dude, AIPAC owns 335 members of our Congress out of the 535 or whatever we have. That's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle. So this is not a left versus right. This is a bipartisan issue of foreign influence and basically foreign
occupation,
kind of like ownership of our politicians. Right? And so how can you be truly a Democrat or truly a Republican when all you do is put Israel first for everything?
Yeah, and they're super gay for Israel. You look at Kamala's speeches, you look at Newsom's speeches, Trump's, and Vance. I even talked with Muslims about this because even a Charlie Kirk video before he made the video, but I liked that video he made before he died. You know, that were a lot. Muslims and Christians are a lot closer than they think. They're more right leaning, meaning that when Muslims were protesting in Minneapolis, they were protesting against the pedophilia. They were upset about that. Same with Christians, but the issue is they're always, especially, I don't mind when Muslims and Christians debate. I just like it when both sides are respectful rather than immediate insults. It just gets annoying, and you get fed up with it at a certain point. But what I did,
it's a genuine exchange.
Yeah, like, hey, Muhammad said this translation here. Jesus is there really evidence behind this? Like just a back and forth. I don't want people talking about, hey, he's a pedophile, hey, he's a fake God. It just gets annoying, But like I look at that. And I look at Charlie, he even admitted, because like I feel Muslims in America, and I've said this with one of my friends, he's Bengali, so let me know as a Muslim man what you think about this. I'd argue Muslims are pretty right-leaning, not like Republicans, but when it comes to values on men being, a patriarchal society, men being the leaders, the providers, the protectors of women, the women are nurturers. They believe in a traditional nuclear family in that sense. Now, depending on the Muslim country, because I know from what I've read in the Quran on Muhammad and everything like that, I noticed he, during war, when women's husbands died, like he took them in and took care of them, right? Or did he marry them, or how did it work?
What you're talking about, I think what you're kind of getting into a little bit is why in Islam it allows for men to have 4 wives. Yeah. And that goes back to exactly what you said. So the reason that came to be was that, remember that in Prophet Muhammad's 23 years, he was attacked by many people. There's many battles that he fought, right? A lot of these battles left a lot of women widows. These widows back then, it wasn't like today where a widow can take her kids and move into an apartment and just be okay for a while until she, kind of gets back on her feet. Back then, if you didn't have a man representing you, you're out on the street. You and your kids were out on the street. So back then, the reason that there was 4 wives that came to be, the way it was revealed to him was to, if you can, as a man, if you have the mental capacity, if you have the financial capacity, if you have the genuine intention and heart to say, yes, I'm married, but I also have the means to support another woman and maybe her children, then what you're doing is you're pulling widows off the street with their kids. Now, if you marry them, which otherwise it would be haram, you can't just bring in a woman.
You can't just do that. And then the first wife has a say, right? If
it depends, because technically she doesn't have a say, but in modern times, of course you would talk to your wife and be like, honey, I'm doing this, right? Back then, today that doesn't make sense. She'd be like, I don't care if she has 3 kids and she's a widow, she's not coming into our house. Back then it wasn't like that. Back then it was like
wartime.
If we don't, here's the thing, right? If you have the financial means, the mental capacity, the maturity, all of that to take this woman in, marry her, call her your wife, and take those kids and call them your own kids. If you don't have any of that, then what you're doing is you're actually hurting this woman by bringing them in for ingenuine or disingenuous reasons, right? And that's why today we joke and say, 4 wives, bro, I can barely handle one. Yeah. Back then, it was the same thing, but it was a different mindset. These women, the wives of these men, when their husbands came back, and they heard the stories of how many men they lost, how many soldiers and brothers they lost, well, don't forget that some of these women were also friends with their wives. So now it's not you're bringing in a stranger into your house, but you're bringing in a woman that your wife also knows. And so, of course, you have to get her consent, and she probably gives that consent. And she says, yes, you bring her in, but then you treat us as equals, because that's also a condition. You have to treat each one as equals. As the moment you have a second, third, fourth wife, there is no more, well, my first, she's the top, and then, this is
it just all falls apart from there, yeah.
There is no hierarchy.
Yeah.
All 4 of these women, or both of these women in front of you, are equal to you, and you have to treat them equal. So it's not like we can just marry 4 wives. There's a lot of rules. And
the financial means, yeah.
There's a lot of prerequisites that come with marrying a second wife. A lot of men don't have the maturity to hang on to one. How can they marry 2? right? So we have to think about the context. We have to think about the historical times. What was the norm back then? What was happening, and why did this even come into existence from the get-go? Because is it better to have a rule with parameters for marrying a second woman who everybody's good with, or is it better to leave all these widows on the street with their kids?
No, I understand
which
that,
is
absolutely.
naturally better,
Well,
right?
you look at the context, like you said, the time period. Like I said, you as a Muslim man and me as a Christian, we don't agree with polygamy. We believe one man, one woman. Anything other than that is lust and desires of flesh. You don't truly love that woman if you look at another person, right? Like even in the Bible, a passage that I like is Jesus said that you've cheated on a woman. If you look at another woman, you lust for her in your heart, right? And I agree with that. You didn't even have to do anything just by looking at her.
So do all Christian women cover their faces and heads because Jesus said that, right?
That would be taken out of proportion. No, what you should do,
Yeah, right.
exactly.
But there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of diadems in the Quran and the Bible, right? Are there?
Well, there's a lot that's taken out of proportion for Islam too. You know.
No, I
Because
agree.
You're saying Jesus said if you look at another woman, and here Islam brings a solution to you looking. We say, look, men are men. We're gonna look, bro. Right?
Yeah.
It's in our natural gut instincts to, even if it's a quick little look
glance,
up, look back down.
Yeah.
We're still gonna take a little look. So the solution is that we understand what the Bible says: one man, one woman, and anything else is lustful. But then Islam came in and refined that and said, not only is it not just one man and one woman, but now other women who are single need to cover their faces so they don't tempt men, because men are men. You know, women have more control. They don't gawk at men like men gawk at women, right? And so and also the times, because back then it was cool to have maybe 2, 3, 4 wives, but today you're not going to see 2, 3, 4 wives unless you go deep into Africa, maybe some parts of Egypt and some of these, Middle Eastern countries. That
Maybe
have
some parts of South Asia,
old-school
but
cultures.
yeah.
Right, because don't forget that just because we're all Muslim, that doesn't mean we all share the same culture.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely. You know the way.
Ethiopian Muslim is different from an Afghan Muslim. It's
absolutely.
different from any other kind of Muslim. And so the culture sometimes overlaps into Islam and kind of supersedes some things in Islam, and that's where we start to stray away from Islam a little bit. Is when you hear about some Muslim guy in Africa that has 6 wives.
But what
right?
he does doesn't mean the guy in Lebanon does that, or the guy in Yemen does that. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying,
the polygamy is also illegal in the U.S. So are those people not Christians, or are they Christians? Because who are you to say if he's a faithful Christian or not?
no, I agree. Like the point I was trying to get at is, like, let's say I shake someone's hand in business. I'm not looking at a woman with lustful intent. We're business partners, we're co-partners. However, you know the meme, like let's say the guy's walking with his girl. He looks behind, you know what I mean? It's a classic. Everyone knows that meme. What I mean is, because Orthodox Christians and certain Catholics do veil, right? They do believe the woman's body is sacred. A man should not be showing his body to anyone else. And a woman should not be showing her body to anyone else, because you would only be vulnerable with your partner, your one and only. You know what I mean? Because when people have sexual intercourse, that's your two become one flesh. You know, your spirit is together at that point. But what a lot of people don't understand, they like to take things out of context. Jesus had diadems, right? Like there was an example where there was a woman was talking about a story saying all men are evil. The Bible's not saying all men are evil. That's just her saying a story, right? Or when Jesus used analogies, like I think even in like Luke 19 verse 27, people say, hey, Jesus doesn't preach violence. Jesus never did preach violence, hatred, or evil. However, Jesus always talks about taking action. Like Jesus, when they turned his father's worship place, his temple, into a place where there's tax collectors, right? No, this is my father's place. How dare you disrespect my father? He did not play around. He was flipping over tables. He was saying how it was. He took action. He wasn't this weak pacifist, because even my friend Andre Williams, 82nd Airborne Division, U.S. Army veteran, I was talking to him. He said, Islam has that militarism. Judaism has it. What about Christians? Too many of them are pacifists. Too many of them are soy boys. They don't understand what it means to take the call, to take action. And I think a good example of that would be like Maronite Lebanese Christians, right? Because the problem is we keep praying. Look, there's nothing wrong with praying and believing in God, but you can't be ignorant. You know, your country is getting you know what I mean? The whole country they're bombing the shit out of it. The IDF is bombing the shit out of it. The Lebanese military are driving out like a bunch of cowards. Hezbollah is the only one keeping them down. And another thing that the media has to take out of proportion.
But the prayers, the thoughts and prayers, that's between you and God.
Oh, of course, it's important.
What is your action between you and these other humans?
Absolutely.
Right? So it can't just be like prayers. That's in your time. You talk to God about the prayers and you pray to God in your way.
Absolutely.
Then you're right. When it comes to the earthly things, there needs to be tangible
take action. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm not saying not to pray, but I'm saying like you can't like beg God to get rid of it and all go away. That's unrealistic, right? You can't be dependent. God doesn't want you to be weak and dependent. You know what I mean? He wants you to face adversity, even if that means facing horrible consequences, because you're going to come out better and stronger in the end. You know what I mean? There is always a light at the end of the tunnel, despite how hopeless the situation looks. But I've noticed like what I like with Afghanistan, there was a few guys, I looked at the page, I'm like, the Taliban has social media? I'm like, these motherfuckers are hilarious. I'm just looking, you know what I mean, through the videos, they're just like, I'm like, these are normal people. These guys aren't like violent and evil. I look on social media, a Lithuanian Catholic goes to Afghanistan, oh, you Christian? I'm Muslim. And then they shake hands. And then you see these guys with rifles just going on prayer mats. I'm like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Because I think social media is a gift and a curse. Because there's so much lies, propaganda, and division and hatred it could spread. But if you really look at like the core and center, hey, Fox doesn't say this, CNN doesn't say this. They say Afghanistan's a shithole, but it seems to be a beautiful country where the Taliban, even said for the Afghans who have raped people like in Germany or in any other European country, we'll kill their asses. We'll execute them. You know, the media doesn't talk about that though. I mean, we know why. But it's like, hey, there's more to it than meets the eye. I kind of want to visit Afghanistan now. You know, I've never been to a Muslim country, but like just by seeing that video and that interaction, that just proved everything wrong that the media has been trying to portray about Afghanistan for 20 plus years. You know, obviously when continue.
I mean, that's all been debunked at this point.
Yeah.
You have so many white dudes going to Afghanistan, Pakistan.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and they're making full YouTube videos. They're sharing their whole journey,
travel vlogs.
And you can see, like, these Taliban guys aren't being paid to act and be nice. That's just what they are.
That's just who they are, yeah.
When we talk about the Taliban, we talk about, you know, these guerrilla war fighters that have been fighting for a long time, maybe even some of them old enough to fight the Russians, but now they're oppressing Afghan women. They're killing people on the streets, which I tend to disagree with most of that. I only agree with the oppression of women because there's Islam, and then there's a radicalized version of Islam, right? And if you think it, like a lot of people don't know this, but most Taliban soldiers are illiterate. They don't know how to read. They don't even know how to read in Afghan, let alone pick up a Quran and read the Quran. So where do they get their information from? Where do they get the reminder that you're Muslim and you should act according to? Well, they get them from imams, right? And imams, just like priests and pastors, can sit there and tell you something and articulate in a way to get you riled up or to calm you down or to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like mega churches. Like they tell you what they want you to hear. Yeah.
The Taliban, most of the Taliban leadership, they're probably, a lot of them are educated. You know, some of them speak English and stuff. But most of their fighters, the ones that are doing the atrocities, they don't know what Islam is, bro. They only know a version of Islam that's been taught to them by people who could actually read.
Oh, absolutely.
This is where the corruption of religion comes in to the benefit of corrupt men. Right, and that happens in every religion, but Afghanistan is a really good example. If these Taliban, if the majority of them could actually read, and they actually picked up the Quran and they would read through the Quran, then they'd be like, "Hold on a second, bro. Like, we're not supposed to be making these women cover like this. They're supposed to go to school. You know, they shouldn't be getting beat by us." But the Taliban are not the ideal people to lead Afghanistan. But here's the thing. The people of Afghanistan are okay with the Taliban right now, because if they weren't, Afghans have always been tribal.
Yeah.
And if they don't like who's in leadership, I guarantee that there's a faction somewhere in Afghanistan, the size of Texas, right, that is thinking about attacking the Taliban or now being a opposition, kind of like the Northern Alliance. So right now, the Taliban is just what Afghanistan has. It doesn't mean that They're always going to be the Taliban. They're always going to oppress women. But this is just what it is. And if the people are okay with it, just like the people of Iran are okay with their regime or the Ayatollah, then who are we to say that
Regime
we're going to
change.
come in there and save women and introduce democracy and all this other stuff? Who are we?
I mean, Libya
Right?
turned into a
These are
shithole of
countries
that
that have been
attitude.
around for
Yeah.
10 times, 11, 15 times longer than the U.S. has been around for. And we're trying to tell them how to live,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's a roller coaster in history. Good times, bad times. Good times, bad times, right? And so Afghanistan's been through it. In fact, Afghanistan has been the most invaded country by the most foreign armies than any other country in this world. So if anybody knows how to deal with this constant change and adaptation to who's in charge and how things are, Afghans have gotten pretty good at it. And that's why they go with the flow, bro. Afghans, I know I'm Afghan. I know how my culture is. We're very go with the flow, right? Until somebody like threatens one of our lifelines, we just kind of let it roll off our backs. That's why in Afghanistan, they weren't afraid of the Taliban. They weren't afraid of us. They're just like, okay, you guys do your thing. I'm just going to live my life because we've been through this already with the Russians. You know?
It's just normal. Yeah.
So again, I guess the point I'm trying to say is that when we talk about, in Afghanistan they do this, in Iraq, bro, you need to understand the history of these people. You need to learn who these people are, how they live, how they think, in order to then get to a place where you feel like you can maybe judge them, you know? So it's a lot of misunderstanding here in America about a lot of things that's happening in the Middle East and Afghanistan, Iran. Yeah.
No, I agree.
You know, but that's part of why I speak up, and I do less and less gun content, and I do more and more kind of these talking head videos on politics, foreign policy, and what's going on. Because me being Afghan, me being Muslim, but also me spending 23 years in the military, Marine Corps Infantry, Army Green Beret, deploying several times all over the Middle East, I bring a certain perspective to everybody who's listening to me, to give them some kind of knowledge and different perspective to think with versus what the mainstream media tells them. And I'll wrap it up with what you lead it off with was social media, right? We all know at this point that mainstream media is owned by Zionist Jews and they control the narrative. And the only people that really pay attention to mainstream news are boomers and evangelical types.
The easiest people to manipulate, yeah.
But most of us, like my age, your age, and everyone in between, is growing up getting their news from social media. Why is it? Why is it that more people are tuning into Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Kawa, Dylan, everybody else, versus tuning into Fox and tuning into CNN? Why is it?
Well, that's because when you look at... My bad, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I'll let you answer that.
I feel like, especially with people like Tyler Oliveira and Nick Shirley, they're really able to go on their feet, interact with gangs. Nick Shirley did that, right? People like Tyler Oliveira, he go to the dangerous parts of Japan. Hey, it tends to be people who are foreign to the country and don't understand how it works. They're willing to get attacked. They have the pepper spray. They have their weapons. They're willing out to go on foot to seek truth and go back to the roots of what journalism really is, right? Because when I look at Tyler Oliveira and his Patreon got taken down, his YouTube video got taken down, he goes to all demographics of people. But when he goes to upstate New York or a certain area in New Jersey, and it happens to be a Jewish community, and he notices that it's always, when it comes to Jewish people that live in these nice areas, the car will be worth more than the house. They'll get all these government benefits, all the tax money goes to them. And it's like, hey, the same Republicans that have issues, because I'm part black, I do have issues with people who have victim mentality in the black community. But if you're going to talk about the Somalis doing shit that hurts our country and helps their country, and if you're going to talk about black Americans making horrible choices with their money and you have to suffer for it, let's talk about the Jews. You know what I mean? Let's talk about every community. Let's hold everybody accountable. You know what I mean? But it seems like with not just Jews, right? Because I'm not saying all are like that.
It happens everywhere.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The whole reason Minnesota got so much attention is because of fraud and daycare centers and this and that. Fraud is everywhere. Fraud is everywhere. Okay, if we really care about fraud, why are we pinpointing a certain demographic of people and not pinpointing the actual?
Upstate New Jersey, upstate New York happens all the time. New Jersey happens in a lot of communities all the time.
Here in Texas, right? There's I forget the name of the dude. He's some white collar white dude, CEO, rich, but he's being investigated for $40 million worth of fraud. And also, don't forget that President Trump also pardons anybody who has fraud that also has a lot of money. Why is he pardoning all these super rich people?
What do they have on him? You start asking questions.
Yeah. You got people giving him $75 million for a pardon. You got CZ, the guy that owns Binance, right? How did he get a pardon? Why did he get a pardon? Why is he pardoning all these people? What about the other guy, the Jewish guy that frauded people out of $45 million of healthcare? So if fraud was really a problem, our president wouldn't be pardoning fraudsters.
No, I agree with that.
And Minnesota is not about fraud. Minnesota is about Muslims and Islamophobia, and we got to keep pushing this campaign against Muslims, because as long as we can villainize Muslims here in America, Americans will be okay with what we do overseas to Muslims.
And that's where I have my problem, And I've had a good experience with Muslims, bad experience with Muslims, horrible experience with Christians, good ones with Christians. I got no hate against nobody. I understand arguments, but I feel like, too, when it comes to minority groups or even people that follow different religions, I always say this: women and black people are used for public gain by politicians because they always look for emotions. I feel, especially during elections, like I was saying before with my Muslim buddy who's Bengali, it's easier to get in Muslims' heads emotion-wise because you'll see a politician that looks, who seems to be a practicing Muslim, right? That's where it can always fool people. And it's kind of like when Kamala Harris, hey, she's mixed race, but hey, she's black. Obama's Kenyan and white, but hey, he's black. You know what I mean? Only to appeal to the people. It's like that Boondocks episode where Granddad, I'm not sure if you saw Boondocks growing up, but where...
I didn't watch it regularly.
Where Granddad was like, man, I'm going to vote for Obama. He's going to decrease taxes. Actually, he's going to increase taxes. What the fuck that nigga going to do for me? Or Riley was like, I'm voting for Obama because he black. Well, why are you voting for him? You know what I mean? So if it's this tribalized idea of someone looks like you, has the same skin color as you, or is the same religion as you, they're not always here to help you. There are Muslims that are Zionists. It sounds weird to say that. There are people that claim to be Christian who are Zionists. It's like with Mamdani, for example, he says free Palestine, right? Okay, you're in New York. You're going to have the tranny flag, the gay flag, anything to get your votes. I'm not saying he's a horrible person. I'm not saying he doesn't have good intentions. I don't know his intentions, right? But when I'm like, guys, he's putting on a show. He's intelligent and he's well-spoken and he's young. I knew he was going to win. Cuomo wasn't going to win. Sliwal's old. These guys look like they're going to shit their pants any given time of the day.
Right.
Mamdani's somewhat healthy looking, right? He's young, he's energetic, he's passionate. New York is more liberal, left-leaning. He's going to win. He's got the Muslims. He's got people of color. He's got the younger generation. He had all he needed to cash the check, right? So when I looked at Mamdani, I'm like, okay, he says free Palestine. I never trust a politician that claims to be against Israel because you kind of know it's bullshit. You know what I mean? I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm not saying he's not trying his best. But I am saying it's like, and then one second he says that he believes Israel has a right to exist. So is it free Palestine or Israel has a right to exist? You know what I mean? Obviously, he's young, pressure, he's a politician. He wants to have a lasting run. So you're going to have to say what you're going to have to say, regardless. I'll give it to, I'll give anyone
the nation doesn't have a right to exist. The people of a nation have
the right to exist.
Right? So it's
like
America doesn't have a right to exist. But Americans have the right to exist. Right? And so when we talk about Israel has a right to exist, the nation state of Israel, the ethno-state of Israel, does not have a right to exist. The people of Israel have a right to exist, but that's only if they can adapt to the other people that are not like them. See, in Islam, in Sharia, it's a law that when you go to a foreign land, that you as the Muslim have to adopt to the laws and the customs and traditions of that land. But not to the point where you feel like your religion and your ethnicity and you as an individual are being impeded or discriminated against, because that's different.
Yeah.
If everyone's being peaceful with me, I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're Muslim, I don't care if you're or Jewish, Christian. I don't even care if I live in a gay community. I mean, when I lived in LA for a while, I lived in West Hollywood. West Hollywood is known to be very heavily gay, right? But that's just where I lived. And as a Muslim, you would be like, well, wait a minute, Muslims don't like gays. No, it's not that. Muslims, there's nothing in the Quran that says kill gay people, right? What it does say in the Quran is that you have an obligation as a Muslim to get along with everybody, right? if and that's coexisting, but only as long as everybody gets along with you. Because the moment that you feel persecuted, oppressed, that's different. Now we're talking about different things, right? But in Sharia, it is my obligation to attempt to, even if we don't get along at first, Dylan, right? Let's say like you and I move in a neighborhood and you live across the street and you look at me funny and I'm like, oh, okay, well that's kind of a weird look, bro, right? And you and I don't talk. But at some point, if you and I have a conversation, right, and you're like, dude, I don't like you. But my job as a Muslim is to say, look, you may not like me, but can you at least give us give us a chance, right? Can we give us a chance to get to know me? And if you don't like me, then how about we come up with a truce, a treaty? You stay on your side of the street, I stay on my side of the street. So in the Quran and Sharia, there's a lot of parameters and there's a lot of guidance for how to get along with people that are completely opposite of you. But it's really putting putting the good foot forward, and then hoping that there's reciprocity from the people that are taking you in, right? And that's where things get grayed out, because it's like, well, these guys are Jews and they don't like me, so why should I even get along with them? It doesn't matter. You have to make that attempt to get along with people. The only time that you can stop making that attempt is if your life is being threatened or your lifelines are being threatened.
Oh, I agree. That's where everything goes out the window. Absolutely.
So Mamdani, in a way, we can call it theatrics, because I heavily think that there's a lot of theatrics in politics. But also in a way, Mamdani being Muslim, I can understand why he's okay with, saying Israel has a right to exist. Now, are those the words he should have used?
Probably not. Yeah.
He should have said Israelis have the right to exist, but not Israel. And as far as him supporting LGBT, that's completely within the norm, because don't forget that there's a lot of gays in Lebanon. Lebanon is 50% Muslim, 50% Christian. How do gays live in a Muslim and Christianity dominated country if both religions look or frown upon homosexuality? It's because we're human, bro. Like we have to add the human context to our religion too, right? Some people go too hard by the book. Some people don't go by the book at all. And then there's modernized people that are like, there's a balance. In Islam, we say there has to be a balance between deen and dunya. You know what those two words mean? Deen and dunya?
Elaborate.
Deen is religion. Dunya is earth, the earthly world. So there has to be a balance between religion and your earthly life, right? Not too heavy to one side or the other. So yeah, I mean, it's a complex thing. It's a complex thing, but I don't think we're talking about, in most cases of extremism, I don't think we're talking about genuine people. I think we're talking about people with ill intent.
No, I understand.
Right? Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree.
Muslims, Christians, Jews in Jerusalem, in Palestine in general, got along for 800 years. That is historical fact, that the three religions got along for 800 years until the inception of an Israeli ethno-state.
Yeah, until 1948, when everything started to fall apart. And that
the concept's proven, bro.
Oh, yeah,
it's a proven concept, right?
No, I agree. Yeah.
If it fails, it's not the religions. If it fails,
it's the people. It's always the people. Oh, I agree. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's always the follower, the person that interprets it, right? Because people could always lie for political gain. We see it all the time, even today, right? I thought it was really interesting because I remember I was talking to, I don't have any hatred against Muslims. Are there things that groups that Christians have been a part of I don't agree with? I thought what happened in the situation with Serbia was horrible, right? You know what I mean? Like, many people were killed, bodies displaced. They're still finding stuff on that. Right?
Yeah.
What happened with the Armenian genocide was horrible. Israel's involvement, Azerbaijan's involvement. Absolutely. And it's even still today. Australia denies it.
A genocide
Turkey.
Within itself.
Yeah. And Holodomor was horrible. It's not just only Ukrainians and Russian Christians who were killed. There were Kazakh Muslims that were killed by the USSR. They don't talk enough about that.
Yeah.
But are there times when Muslim refugees can't take advantage of the system? I'd say yeah, but I don't think Muslim people are horrible. Again, I'm not going to look at what this guy from Nigeria did and what this guy from Syria did versus how Lebanese Muslims are or how Turkish Muslims are. Like, I'm going to be honest, like, people that tend to cause those issues, yes, they tend to be Kurdish, tend to be Syrian. tend to be, but I'm not going to hate the whole Levant just because of that one Syrian or repeated events. It's just evil. Yeah.
That's
But
a deficiency on you. That's not a deficiency on
no,
them.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah.
But for the people
But
that
there's a double standard here in America.
absolutely, there should be.
Because, well, no, there shouldn't be a double standard. But there is a double standard here in America. Because I can pull up articles even right now of today. I guarantee I can find you an article of a white Christian man that
who molested their
got
kid,
arrested for pedophilia,
absolutely,
child essay, or something to that effect, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Now that barely makes the news. And even if it does make the news, what did they say about this man? Oh, he had mental health issues.
And it's more localized and it's not made national, which is a problem.
They don't even talk about his religion. But let it be somebody like a Muslim man, an Arab.
Someone who could be brown.
Child essay, pedophilia. And then they plaster it everywhere, and then they put a blanket label on all Muslims. You see, all Muslims.
See, this is what I told you about yesterday, Craig. So
yeah.
I understand what you mean. Yeah,
Here in America, I guarantee, bro, like Muslims have the lowest ranking in every crime category, and that's from the FBI crime data stats. That's not Kawa saying that. You could go look it up. Muslims are at the bottom of every list for every crime.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
There's only 4 million of us here, and the only reason we came to America is because we were escaping some war that probably the West started in some Middle Eastern country, right? And now we're escaping that to come to a place that doesn't have war. And like
we're to seek refuge.
I'm a product of foreign war. Like the reason my family is here in America is because we escaped at a young age. I grew up here. I grew up in the cornfields of Nebraska in the 80s, bro. Like I grew up in the best time in America as a young kid in the 80s. I grew up with a bunch of white ass friends. I grew up with Hispanic friends, black friends. One of my best friends, his name was Muhammad. He was a black dude. His whole family had Muslim names, but they were all devout Christians. Right?
Oh wow, that's cool.
At the age of 14, I was trying to like figure that out. I was at home. I was like, Mom, what is going on? I'm meeting I'm meeting Christians with Muslims' name, but he's one of my best friends to this day, bro. We still talk, and I grew up loving America. I grew up understanding the culture of America. I grew up assimilated to a certain degree, but I still hang on to my culture and I still hang on to my religion. And that's how it should be, but unfortunately, we're in a time where it's
people
not the
more
80s,
bigoted and
it's
ignorant.
Not even the 90s.
Yeah.
Now we're in 2026, where, bro, if you're not white, there's somebody's out there calling for you to get deported. You know, like forget religion. They're just saying pretty much like we need to basically whitewash America. We need to make America Christian again. We need to make America white again. White people need to be proud of who they are. Stop apologizing. Well, okay, you could do all that. But
don't hate on other people as you do that. I understand what you mean. Yeah.
What you're inciting is tension and violence and hate crimes and stuff like that. That's what you're inciting. You know, so, I mean, they want to deport all illegals, but then why are we just going after random brown people? You know?
No, I agree. There are incidences that happen near me, where people were citizens and they were held on. I don't agree with that. I always believe in precautions, but I don't like seeing pregnant women being knocked over. You know, I even had this conversation yesterday. I believe ICE could do a better job of handling things, and if anything, Trump's not actually deporting a lot like he promised. You know, that's also a false promise on his end. And the way he's dealing with it now, the way ICE is dealing with these issues is a problem. You have false promises, you have more lies, and you have a lot of shams in this presidency. I'm not saying to hate on Muslims. I'm saying the point I wanted to make was, okay, you complain about this Muslim migrant seeking refuge, and yeah, I did see a video a little while back on a German person putting a condom in the woman's cup. Look, I agree that people should not be having sex out of wedlock or having sex with a partner and procreating when they can't afford, you know, where they're at now or the kids they have now. That's irresponsible, and you know, the government and the people should not have to suffer to pay for that. However, if you don't want them here, and if you're complaining, hey, this guy from Syria, hey, this Kurdish guy, hey, this Iraqi guy, not all of them are like that. However, could you argue that some are taking advantage of the system and not assimilating? Yes, but not all are like that. But they're only there because of the decisions and hatred you feel for them. Your hatred for why they're there, and your hatred, yeah, exactly, your hatred for them. Meanwhile, you don't hate the groups that you support why they're there in the first place. It's Jewish people, Jewish companies, not all, right? But for these Marxists, these quasi policies, right? Where you see they are letting in refugees into Europe. It is a part of the Kalergi plan, right? They want white people to let him in, let him in, let him in, and out to be outpopulated and racial tension to be created. They want people to hate each other. They want there to be a right and left and to be controlled. They want organizations manipulating and lying to the masses, right? Even I said this today. I said to one of my friends, he's more far right. I said, the far right movement has the knowledge they have and are educated on things about the Holocaust because the Holocaust deniers, the most famous ones, were Jewish, right? Like Brother Nathaniel Kapner, David Christopher Cole, Bob Fisher. He was half Jewish. He hated Jews. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying this was a guy that hated Jews. He talked about the Holocaust in certain details they didn't talk about in it. There were even rabbis that admitted, hey, Hitler hated us because we spread homosexuality and we spread all these lies and we spread this degeneracy and we divided the nuclear family and we're responsible for feminism. There was even a rabbi that admitted, hey, we killed millions of Russians.
And transgenderism, don't forget.
Exactly. The first clinic was there in Germany by a Jewish person, Sigmund Freud. He was a Jewish doctor. For some reason, we credit this psychopath. He said that women secretly desire a penis and men want to have sex with their mother. That's insane. Maybe he wasn't wrong about women secretly desiring a penis with this whole transgender shit now, but it's insane the stuff they promote. The Talmud, more than two genders. I don't mean to hold you. I appreciate you for your patience. But yeah, there are things that Muslim migrants have done I don't agree with. However, they wouldn't be there if it weren't for the ignorance and hatred that brought them there in the first place. Right? So like I said, I don't hate the Muslims. I understand all arguments. I understand why certain people...
Don't forget that... And sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, continue.
Just to support what you're saying, don't forget that over 80% of the black slaves that we brought from Africa here were Muslims. We brought them here, they came here, and we forced them to convert to Christianity. We forced them to change their names and forced them to forget about Islam. But the fact is that over 80% of the slaves that we brought here were all Muslims.
No, I agree. It came from West Africa.
Survived the trip anyway.
Yeah. They all came from West Africa, mainly areas like in Nigeria too, right? Predominantly a Muslim area.
And a lot of people, there's this, we can take this argument back all the way to Plymouth Rock, bro, because people are saying America was founded as a Christian nation. If you did some studying and understood who the founding fathers were,
Freemasons.
half of those guys were deists, right?
Yeah.
Half of them were deists. You know what a deist is, right? Somebody that they believe in religion, but they don't choose a religion because they're more about controlling faith than they are about choosing a faith. If you look at deism, half of our original founders were deists. They weren't Christians. Even if they were Christians, the Constitution says that there's freedom of religion for all. We know for a fact that there was Muslim explorers from Spain that came to America way before any white European pilgrim came here. There's documentations of Spaniard explorers who were Muslim who came, who met with the indigenous tribes, who lived among them, right, for months and months and months. And in theory, I could say, well, Islam was here before Christianity, and technically, I'm right. Now, was it the only religion here before Christianity? No, of course not. Of course not. But I just don't like how people say America's a Christian nation and we need to get back to a Christian nation. It's not for Muslims, and Islam isn't compatible with the West. And I would tend to argue that Islam isn't compatible with the West, because what does the West represent?
Well, it goes against the West. The support for Israel, the pornography, right? That's normalized in the West.
Pornography, alcoholism, gambling, OnlyFans,
partying, clubbing, and stuff like that. Yeah.
From a young age, we objectify women. Why do we put our little girls in beauty pageants where they're half dressed doing provocative dancing?
And then you have little kids oiled up as if it's a bodybuilding competition. It's fucking disgusting. Nah, I agree.
Right. And then they grow up, and of course they're going to create an OnlyFans, right? So we live in a society that perpetuates all of these cancers, and yet we want to call ourselves a Christian nation. I disagree. But you know what I do agree with? I agree with let's make America Christian, because as a Muslim, I would happily live in a faithful Christian America versus the America of today that we have allowed it to become, or as we said earlier, we have allowed Zionist Jews to create over time.
No, I agree. And because even as a Muslim, like, you have Isa, I believe in Jesus, Yasu, right? Like, he's a prophet for you, he's God for me. we have more in common compared to the people that look at the Talmud and see Jesus as evil, and the IDF destroying statues in Lebanon, whether it's St. George in the Middle East, whether it's churches they're making fun of the Mother Mary, spitting on Christians. You have a crucifix having a hammer smacked right on it. Yeah, I agree. I also wanted to ask, because I always like to make sure, because I grew up watching a lot of history and documents, because you said there were Muslim explorers from Spain that came before any European did?
Yeah, if you look up, the Esteban the Black, Esteban the Moor, I'll give you a name. Google it. He was here quite a few years before the Plymouth Rock and the Pilgrims. And if you study Esteban the Black, he was, I forget from where. I think he was Moroccan. I think he was from Morocco or Turkey. I forget. But they called him Esteban the Moor, Esteban the Black, and if you look him up, you'll see that he came to America before Plymouth Rock. He actually met indigenous people. He lived amongst them for months before he...
North African Muslim Moor from Morocco was one of the first non-indigenous... Okay, because there was a gentleman that came to the Americas, right? I think his name was Leif Erikson. I want to know when Leif Erikson came, and I want to know when... Estebanico.
Well, Leif Erikson, I believe, came before Esteban. There was one other person, Pontius or
because I know Leif Erikson came to what is now known as Newfoundland, Canada, around I think 1000 Central Era.
Right. So if we're calling Newfoundland, Canada, America's back.
No, I'm not saying America, but like the Americas, like the whole land.
I'm vouching for him. Yeah. I'm vouching for him. I'm saying Leif Erikson, who I'm aware of, came to the Americas, right? And there was one other guy, I think, that also came right after him. And then we have Esteban the Black that came. But if you look at Leif Erikson's activities while he was here, and you look at Esteban the Black's activities while he was here, it tells you a really good story. It gives you some good context. Really good fun facts to learn, by the way.
No, there's definitely a lot more research I have to do on the Americas, because even I was talking to someone, like, what does it really mean to be an American now? Because even Native Americans, they have East Asian and Siberian ancestry, right? They killed other Native Americans for land. So I can understand when white people make the argument, hey, I'm speaking English. I'm technically speaking white man's language. I'm not white. I'm mixed race. I can understand that society isn't just shaped by the food you eat, and culture isn't just the food. It's the way you dress, right? It could be the way you speak. And how we are now, I can't agree with the fact that white settlers did build America, but there are a lot of factors that happened after that, right? America's constantly changing, right? What is the American identity? That's something I talk with people all the time. What is America?
Do we have one? Do we have one?
An identity?
Yeah. Does America have an identity? Or maybe this is two separate questions. One, do we have an identity? Two, does America have a culture?
Does America have a culture, and does America have an identity? I guess it depends on the person. I'd say, yeah, when I think America, immediately, what do you think? American Eagle. Immediately, what do you think? Family barbecues. What do you think? Yeah, it can involve church, like Protestant-style churches. Protestantism is a huge factor on, like, what America is today, but not everyone in America is Christian. I understand that. I also imagine Frank Sinatra. You know what I mean? I imagine jazz.
I want you to think about this question. You don't have to answer it here.
Yeah.
But imagine you were talking with a scholar, somebody way smarter than me, perhaps a professor, and he understands America, right? And he asks you, or maybe this is a college course that you have to present, what is the identity of America? Would you be confident saying that the bald eagle and barbecues in our backyard is what the identity of America is?
No, but I would say building opportunity. And is that vague? Yeah, that can be seen as vague. But I would say there are certain symbols that people immediately think when they think America. They think of fighting back. They think of English, French, Scottish, Irish settlers, and even people that immigrated from Italy trying to build something, trying to fight for something. America has always been, look, it's going to be difficult, but we will persevere and we will make a better life for our descendants after us. That's what I would actually say. I'm trying to think of like symbols. What do people immediately think when they think America?
Yeah, symbols, yeah. I would agree.
Yeah. Symbols wise, yeah.
Symbols, bald eagles, barbecues. Maybe
it's more than just that, obviously, than just red, white, and blue. It's the blood that we've
Like a
soaked.
Ford Mustang,
Yeah.
like like there's a lot of symbols of America for sure, but it's very hard to articulate.
It's hundreds of years of blood that's been soaked into the ground.
And it's even harder to articulate a culture, because people are like, well, if Islam isn't compatible with the West, what is the West? Somebody define the West. The West in this case implying that it's America. So what is the West? Right?
I'd say like innovations and constantly new inventions, trying to figure out a way to evolve. Not only just the machinery that we're constantly coming up with, not only the weaponry, but I'd say philosophy is a huge part of. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are Eastern philosophers as well, right? But I'd say the philosophers that have
also Eastern technology as
well.
And inventions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just challenging you a little bit. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You and I are just kind of
we're just vibing out. Yeah. But I'd say like when it comes to America, it's a lot of symbols. So it really does puzzle one when thinking identity. When I think identity, I always think opportunity, and I've always seen America as a rebellious child, always fighting, always striving, always attempting to succeed, attempting to improve. I mean, now we're in a weird period, but we always have adversity in those periods of time, right? We've seen weak men grow up in tough times. They have to be strong men. There is no choice to be weak. You have the luxury to be weak, but you're enjoying that luxury too much is what I take from it. You know what I mean?
Where do you think we are in that cycle right now?
I feel like we're in a cycle where, yes, we are divided, but people are waking up. We are attempting to.
I mean where, strong men create good times create weak men create, where are we?
I feel like we're at the time where weak men are facing difficult times. When I look at the testosterone rate and the birth decline, especially amongst whites, and even with everyone amongst Asians, you look at Asians in the 1940s and you look at Asians now, they're very feminized, BTS looking. I think we're definitely in the weak men stage, but we are climbing that mountain. We are trying to find,
I agree with you. I agree that we are in a weak men kind of phase. I also specifically agree with you that we are possibly the generation of weak men who are like, I've had enough.
And we'll fight for a better future for our descendants.
We've had enough, and now it's not like we may not necessarily be fighting a foreign army or foreign military like our forefathers did, but we're definitely fighting something. We can all acknowledge that.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Here in America, that's foreign. Something here that is foreign. That is what we're fighting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
a lot of people woken up. I think a lot of people have woken up since October 7th.
Especially with the Jewish question, absolutely. And I'm one of those people, as someone who's mixed race, I don't want white people going on their knees and kissing my feet and apologizing. Like, that shit's gay, man. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to. It is. It's fucking weird. It's cuckoldry faggot behavior. Because I'm going to be honest, look, Jews better give me my fucking reparations, all right? I'm not concerned about white people now, but in all seriousness. When I look at this whole situation, I don't want hate towards a race to be justified, because look, everyone owned slaves. Even my ancestors, where they came from, in those countries in sub-Saharan Africa, they still sell slaves today. You know what I mean? Whites have done horrible things, Jews have done horrible things, blacks have done horrible things. I'm happy to be in the country I'm in. Listen, those parts of Africa that my ancestors sold their own from, because there were tribes that sold their own, I'm glad I'm not there.
That's how the whites and Jews caught on to it, because it was already a business in Africa, right?
It was still happening now.
Warring tribes taking prisoners, selling them back off and shit like that. And the white Europeans and the Jews caught on, and they were like, this is a
opportunity.
Good business idea, right?
A few Arabs in the Middle East still are taking it. I think in Saudi Arabia, they still have slaves there, if I'm not mistaken, in Saudi Arabia.
I don't think.
Not Saudi Arabia. Is it UAE? I'm retarded. Hold on. I think it's
UAE is a little
different than the Saudi.
We call it slavery, but that's also because of UAE's entire workforce.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Are imported, right? They're all like none of them. Like in the UAE, did you know in the UAE that once you turn like 85 or something like that, you have to leave. Like, so you could own houses and businesses in the UAE. When you turn that age of 80,
when that clock gets there, you got to go.
They liquidate all your assets, give you the market value, and tell you to get the fuck out, right? Because you're not Emirati. You're a visitor.
You're just there.
So you can live there, live a life there, create a life, but at a certain age, you got to go.
What percentage of the country are immigrants? Because I know only 20% of the people are Emirati,
No,
right?
the entire workforce
Is literally immigrants, or even people living there in general are literally.
the entire workforce is immigrants.
Yeah, it's actually crazy.
They're all like Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistani, Hindu, maybe Afghan.
Few North Africans once in a while. Yeah, because I looked at that and I'm like, damn, it's really a mixed country. But the thing is, I feel diversity doesn't work in a lot of countries unless I notice diversity tends to work in either an Orthodox Christian country or like hardcore Muslim countries where it's like, hey, listen, man, fuck around and find out. You know what I mean? We got rules. Either you follow them or you don't. So that's what I liked about, I've never been to UAE, but I liked about the layout of it. They don't let shit slide. You know what I mean?
You don't quite a lot. So I can tell you firsthand. I've been to UAE like 5 times. So like I can tell you that the Emiratis there, like only the Emiratis can join the military. You can't be if you're not Emirati, you can't join the military. Also, only Emiratis can like everybody can own a business, right? And all these Emiratis own businesses, but then who works for them are all immigrants that have been imported. Their entire, like I said, they're the whole. That's why a few years ago, like 5-10 years ago, when the UAE people were beating people with canes. Remember when that came out? They were beating their workers. That's when all that came to light. It's like, well, what's going on here? Well, their entire workforce has been imported, right? And if these people knew what kind of power they had over the UAE government, like if they were just like, hey, today or tomorrow, we're all going to sit down protest. No one's going to work. Do not show up to work.
Fair.
The economy of the UAE would collapse.
It would be destroyed. It'd be fucked. Yeah.
Right. They would have to fall back on all their riches to fix it. But yeah, man, that's what happens when you got these Arab nation states that are like, well, you know, they're not like America, bro. They're not like you can come here, you can start a business, you can basically live out your dreams. Whatever you can handle, you can achieve, right? The stars are the limit for you, right? It's not like that in some other places. They have conditions. That's why America is probably the greatest country in the world, but we're also one of the most fucked up countries in the world because, in my opinion, our government is way too big and the people don't have the power. You know how we say power to the people?
Yeah, certain things should be civil matters and certain things should be federal. But certain things are being considered federal. Meanwhile, we're wasting time on some girl that made a big Yahoo post compared to someone who killed a girl that could even be let out, and that's what's really scary.
Our system is too loose. If it wasn't too loose, you wouldn't have a failed entrepreneur and reality talk show host be the president of the United States. He would have never had a chance in politics if our system wasn't so loose and corrupt. Right?
Yeah.
But anybody can be president. I mean, I hope Kanye runs for president one day. Why not? Dan Bilzerian is running for the government of Florida. Why not?
Let's see what happens. Yeah, I mean...
Dude, you could be... I don't care if the head Dallas cheerleader says, I'm running for president. You know what? Go get it, girl. Get after it. Because you should be afforded that opportunity. But that also tells you how loose our politics are.
Yeah, man. When you got people... Yeah, it's all money, yeah. Like, you got people like Myron Gaines, like, he'll say Jeets stink and women are stupid. People would rather have him as a president as opposed to Trump. Like, that's the reality we live in.
Well, because we're at a place now where we're so fed up with lies and a lack of transparency.
It's just fuck it, go for it. Yeah.
Like for example, Trump, you almost got assassinated in Butler, bro. Why are you not leading the charge on finding your potential murderer? Why is Erica Kirk not leading the charge on finding the
who killed her husband?
Yeah. Because we're being lied to. It's all a fucking playbook.
It's all an act. They're all puppets.
And we're all so tired of it that we are going to extremes. Like, you know what, Dan Bilzerian? We're okay with you being governor because at least you're honest. At least you're truthful. At least you're saying the things that we want to hear. Like, not just feeding us bullshit, but saying the actual problems that are in this country. You know, and that's why we thought Donald Trump was that guy, because we were like, well, he's not a politician.
Well, in 2016, he said what happened to Libya was wrong, and he said what happened in the Middle East was wrong as well. He's anti-war. Oh, Iran.
He talked about foreign lobbies.
Yeah.
He said he's going to squash that shit. He said he's going to drain the swamp. He said I'm not a career politician. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to clean house because America first. Let's make America great again. And what happened to him? What happened to him, bro?
He became the exact thing. He lived long enough to see himself become the villain, right?
He didn't just drain the swamp. He became the king of the swamp.
He swam in it. Did front laps and everything.
Fucking swamp monster, bro. Like, so So this is what happens. Like, is it the money that corrupts people? Is it the positions that corrupt people? Is it the blackmail? Is it the coercement? Is it the threats? Is it the threat of being JFK'd? You know?
Yeah.
What is it that gets these politicians to do a complete 180 once they
Or is it
reach
sucking
power?
off Bill Clinton and no one wanting to find out? It could be that.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
So
Yeah, I appreciate you for taking your time,
we're
man.
living in some
Yeah.
complex times.
I do hope America does find their identity, but there was one quote I did like, when you're trying to figure out, hey, are we Protestant? Because I noticed a lot of Americans are turning more to Orthodoxy a lot quicker, too.
I've noticed.
Yeah, I noticed that. I've always liked Orthodox Christians are pretty based, like John Adams said, like in our Constitution, that our Constitution was only made for a holy and religious people. It is holy and adequate for the government of any offer. And John Adams, yes, he was a Christian at the time. People say, well, a majority of America was Christian. But back to what you said, it reminded me of an episode where Sneeko was talking to Myron Gaines. And they're both, well, they claim to be Muslim. I don't know how their faith is with God, right? But they're both streamers, both popular. They were saying, like, the Constitution talks about God. Which God is that referring to? It's not specific. It's not saying Allah. It's not saying Jesus. So I can understand why people question it. I do believe the founding fathers.
There should be a reason, though. There should be a reason.
No, I understand. Yeah.
I mean, you understand that Allah is just the word God in Arabic, right?
Absolutely. And Christians say Yasu Allah, all the time, that are Coptic or Arab.
So would you agree that my God and your God are the same? Like the words, just the words.
Well, the words are the same. Absolutely.
The words are the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are certain Christians that believe Jesus is God. There are certain Christians that don't believe Jesus is God, right? I'm not going to sit there and be like, well, no, he is, or he isn't. I'm not going to sit there and disrespect people that way. But, what I do is I just like to educate people on where Muslims stand on Jesus and where Jesus fits into Islam. And it's something you mentioned earlier. We have so many similarities between Christianity and Islam. Really, the only thing that separates us is the Trinity.
Is the concept of the Trinity, your prophet, who is Muhammad, and Allah.
So the Trinity is what separates us, because we're saying, no, God doesn't have partners. He doesn't have associates. He doesn't have sons, daughters. He doesn't have anything. God is one. So that's why Islam is like truly monotheistic, whereas Christianity is not so much monotheistic, because you're saying there's a Father, a Son, and a Holy Spirit, right?
No, I understand what you're trying to say, but with us,
But the words, I'm just talking about the words.
No, I understand. The words Allah, it means God, in that language,
People are like, well, F Allah. And I'm like, dude, you're just saying F God in Arabic. Like, that's blasphemy.
Yeah, it is,
Like, stop being so ignorant,
Yeah. So we believe as
Christians.
Christians.
Listen, did you know that there's Christian Arabs who say Allah?
Oh, yeah, Yasu Allah. I've seen it all the time, even in Egypt.
Right.
Coptics. Yeah. Absolutely.
There's Christian Muslims that say Salaam Alaikum.
Lebanese
right?
Christians, Yeah, I've seen that.
Allah, like you said. So then are you saying as a Christian, American Christian, that because those Arab Christians are saying Allah, that they're not really Christians?
That'd be ridiculous.
Not you.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
General.
That'd be because let's be honest, these people who are Semites of the Middle East have some of the oldest Christian groups and denominations in years. In Ethiopia, the Tewahedo Orthodox,
They prostate themselves, bro. Like you could, the way they pray to God and the way a Muslim prays to God, you could almost not tell the difference.
Well, yeah, because Orthodox have been doing it prostrating for years, right? Even before Islam became mainstream. Yeah. Orthodox have been doing it for years. And even with the concept of the Trinity, so how I always try to put it is that as humans, we have three parts. We have the mind, body, and spirit, right? As Christians, we believe that with the concept of the Godhead, he is one God, but has three parts. The Father is the will, the mind. The Son is the body. He does the will of the Father.
But did Jesus say that?
Jesus says he's one with the Father.
Jesus also said the Father is greater than I.
He did say that. But he said that everything.
Wait a minute. Jesus also went to a mountain, to the mountainside, and.
Or you talk about he get on his knees to his Father. God. Well, that's how he communicated with.
Wait a minute. But what was it? What's the? I'm trying to find the verse in my head, but I think it was John or somebody said Jesus went up to the mountainside and prayed to God.
He prayed to his Father. Correct.
No, it didn't say Father.
No, he prayed to God. No, I'm saying who he did pray to. I'm giving the context of it.
But is Jesus praying to himself? Is God praying to God?
Well, Jesus, when he got on his knees, he was communicating to his Father. And the reason why, because Jesus... Hold on,
But I
let
thought
me...
Jesus was all knowing.
He is all-knowing, but when he...
Then what does Jesus and God have to talk about?
Because when Jesus got on his knees, right, he has a human nature and a divine nature. Hence why when he came back to life, right, he still had that divine nature with the Father and the Holy Spirit.
But Jesus is praying to God, not the Father.
I understand what you're saying, but hold up. Let me explain.
Well, here's the thing, right? Okay, let's back out. Let's zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
The problem, and I'm not trying to bash Christianity, but
no, I want to hear you.
The reason why Muslims have trouble
understanding the Trinity, yeah.
No, not understanding it. We understand it just fine, but we don't believe it because, as Muslims, we believe that Christians are actually following Paulism, not Christ. Jesus never said he was God. Jesus never said that to worship me. Jesus also never said the word Christianity did not come out of Jesus' mouth, nor did Jesus ever say to use a wooden cross as a symbol. These are all men's words, right? So when you look at what actually Jesus said versus what the men said, and in the Gospels, we don't even know who wrote the Gospels. The 4 Gospels, all 4 of them start with according to. Well, according to who, right? So I'm just telling you, that Muslims can't believe in a Trinity because a Trinity makes no sense. And if you research more about the Spirit and the actual Spirit, the Spirit comes from the Old Testament when we say the Spirit, right? But if you look at what they're talking about for the Spirit in the Old Testament, where it comes from, where it's going to be, and who it is, it's referring to another man, right? Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him as well, and Jesus, is mentioned in the Old Testament. I will find that verse for you so you can read it. But you can't look at the English words. The English words will say altogether lovely, but altogether lovely in Aramaic is actually Muhammadim. Muhammadim means altogether lovely. So my point here is that I dive way deeper than the Bible, bro.
In the roots. No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But most people just look at the book. Well, John said, well, first of all, bro, who's John? Right?
Well, there's 3 Johns, right? There's John.
I have no quarrels with John. I have a lot of quarrels with Paul. Okay, I don't know who this Paul guy is. He was a murderer of Christians back in the day.
And then he became the exact thing that he claimed to be against. I understand what you're saying, and
but what did he claim?
Well, he claimed he saw Jesus, that he was blinded, and then he went.
That's one version. What was the second version?
Well, then when he went to Damascus when he was blinded, and he was healed, like when he was in the baptismal waters.
Well, the one version is that he saw Jesus. The second version is that they all saw Jesus. The third version is that nobody saw anything, they just heard a noise, right? And he thought that it was Jesus talking to him. So when I disrespect Paul, I'm not disrespecting Christianity. What I think happened is you had a plant that came in and stole the words of Jesus, turned them into a thing called Christianity so that they could control people with that.
To use as a scapegoat, you believe?
Because I think Paul was, if we could call him a Zionist Jewish plant, then that's what I would call him.
Interesting.
He was a plant. I think he was a Jewish bounty hunter who killed Christians, and then he also found a way to basically corrupt the what Jesus brought, the Word of God, or the Injil as we call it.
So you say, no, I understand.
The man never met Jesus. He never heard Jesus speak. He never even saw Jesus, but somehow he gets to write 2/3 of the Bible.
So
the people who verify him also never met Jesus. So I mean, so I'm just saying, I'm trying to give you guys, your listeners, a picture, kind of a summary,
an idea. No, I understand. Yeah.
Of why Muslims have trouble believing in the Bible, on top of all the corruption that's in the Bible. I mean, it took 350 years to complete the Bible, right? It took at least 70 years to even understand what a Trinity is. And, again, Jesus didn't talk about a Trinity. He didn't mention Christianity. He never mentioned a wooden cross. He never said, worship me. He never said, I'm the son of the Father, I'm the son of God. He said the Father and the Son, right? But you're saying the Father, I am.
Well,
I am one with the
In
Father.
John chapter 10, verse 30, Jesus said, I and the Father are one. And there was a moment in Hebrews where the Father, as the King, recognized his Son, who was Jesus. But what I wanted to explain to you was in the Quran, right? Did God say
Yeah.
he was the first and the last?
What do you mean?
Well, what did Allah refer to himself as? I know he has numerous names in your Quran, is what I'm asking. Did he refer to himself as first and last?
When we say he has numerous names, it's
Yeah.
like we say he has 99 names, right? But those names are like this: all powerful, all knowing, all benevolent, all merciful, right?
Yeah.
But his actual name of what we call him, we don't call him most merciful, most benevolent. We just say Allah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's your question.
No, I understand what you mean. So in chapter 57, verse 3, was he referred to as the first and the last?
You're talking about Surah?
Yeah.
What was it again?
I believe it
Just so I
was
can
it in
reference it.
57, verse 3?
57, verse 3?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Let me pull it up.
Yeah.
I haven't memorized the Quran. I never will.
I memorized a few of them. I read, I think it's 114, 117 chapters, somewhere around there. 114, possibly.
Right. So, Surah Al-Hadid, 57, verse 3 says, He is the first and the last, the ascendant, manifest, and the intimate, hidden, and He has full knowledge of all things. So, what this... Here, let me see. So He is the first and the last. He is the manifest, right? Like outwardly, right? But He is also hidden, as in inward, right? Like, so basically, when we say He's the first and the last, is because He's the creator. He's not the He's not the creation. He is the creator. So of course He's going to be the first and the last. Long after you and I die, long after even Judgment Day, He's going to be around. So He was there to create everything, and He'll be there to end everything. And so, what was your question from there?
Yeah, so for Jesus, I believe it was Revelation chapter, because I memorized, as many monotheistic religions as I could. I studied a bit of Zoroastrianism.
No, it's good.
Yeah, I tried to. So Jesus referred to himself in 22 verse 13, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, and the beginning and the end. So there were examples.
Sorry, give me that verse one more time.
Yeah. So Revelation chapter 22 verse 13. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end.
Right, I'm looking at it.
So I'm going to give you some verses to answer some of your questions earlier. And there was one where in Hebrews and there's also another verse I want to bring up that Christians should hear this one. Because when they say Jews are God's chosen people, there's literally a part where it talks about when you kill the Son of God, they're basically cut off, which is in Matthew 21, I'm pretty sure. But
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I acknowledge that verse, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, here's the thing that with the Bible, it's hard to tell what Jesus said and what Jesus didn't say, right? It's hard to tell what was Jesus' actual words, and it's hard to tell who
versus perspective
was speaking for him. Because again, like it took 60 years for people to start documenting the Bible, right? 60 years after Jesus, whether you believe he died and rose, or whether you believe like the Muslims that he never died and he rose, right? So, because we both believe that he's coming back at the end of judgment. So we both think he's alive in heaven. That's what Muslims think, is he's alive in heaven. That's why he can come back on the day of judgment and slay the Antichrist or the false Messiah. And I think the point that I was trying to make here is that, where was I going with this? I'm sorry. Because we were talking about...
Well, I think what Muslims usually with this point, they'll look at, if he's God, why is he acting as man? Usually that's where the point usually tends to go.
It's not a question necessarily. We don't question it. We just know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As Muslims, we have to believe. If you're faithful, you believe that Jesus came here like all the other messengers before him, right? Because if we're saying, like people will say, well, Muhammad came after Jesus, and I'm like, okay, well, Jesus came after Moses. Right?
I understand in the whole long line of ancestors.
Like
I get what you're
Moses
saying.
Came
yeah.
after Abraham. It's like, how far do you want to go back with that silly kind of
So I wanted to ask too, because with Muslims, you guys believe like during the sign of judgment, is that when Jesus comes or Isa comes? Like they call it the judgment.
Jesus, peace be upon him, will come at the end of times, whenever that is, to slay the false Messiah.
So that's what I wanted to ask right there, because Muhammad, you guys believe that he was like the perfect man, like he was the ideal model of what a man should be, right?
Nobody says that.
Okay, that's why I want to make sure.
The only thing that Muslims will say about Prophet Muhammad, yes, we can say that he was a honorable, benevolent man. He was, but what he really is he's the seal of the prophets.
Seal of the prophets. Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say on a pedestal, who would be put on a higher pedestal? Would it be Muhammad or Isa as a Muslim?
No, Jesus.
It'd be Jesus. Okay, that's what I want to know right there. Because it's just funny to me. Because just by that answer, people will claim Jews are God's chosen, yet Jesus is put on a higher pedestal than Muhammad. You know what I mean? Like, just by what you just said. You know what I mean? I knew how you'd answer the question. It's just, it never ceases to amaze me, like the stupidity of Zionists. Just by the answer to your question. Like, even the look on your face when you answer that question. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Listen. You know, you might be a little younger, and I'm not kind of discount the amount of experience you've had with Zionists, but I've debated plenty of Zionists, bro, and what I've learned from every one of them is that when a man does not actually believe in God, it's like talking to a stone wall. Mm. There's no getting through that.
It's just the look in your eyes alone. I could see, yeah.
When you were an atheist, and you truly in your heart don't believe in God, there is nothing I could say as a Christian, as a Muslim, as an actual Jew to bring you back onto the righteous path. Some atheists find their way to God themselves. Yeah. But a Zionist atheist, it's like you can't be a man of faith and also be a Zionist at the same time. Like the two contradict each other. Yeah. Because what do Zionists want? They want to control the world.
They want to play God.
They want to play God, control the world. Right? And so who are they more to lean towards? Is it God or is it the opposite of God?
Well, it'll be the opposite. They'll lean towards man and their desires and everything that, you shouldn't be. Yeah.
Devil worshiping, Satan, or the synagogue of Satan, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying that it's just Jews that adopt that, but Zionists purely adopt, they're not men of God. If they're not men of God, but they want control of the world, then that makes them a lot like Lucifer, a lot like Satan, right?
Yeah, like the fallen angel, yeah.
What was the last thing Satan said to God? In Islam, he says, okay, like, you can cast me out, but I will try till the end of time to take man away from you, right? Yeah. I will tempt him till the end of time to get him away from you. That is the last thing he said to God. That I am going to pull these people away from you. And he succeeded in a lot of places. You know the saying, like, evil only has as much power as you allow it to have. Right? Yeah. If we allow these people, like, evil can only enter your home if you
let it in.
If you allow it to enter your home.
Absolutely.
So there's these evil people, like, dude, my point here is don't debate with Zionists. Like, you can for experience, but I'm telling you, if you want to have a good talk, productive talk, you're not going to have it with the Zionist. It's a waste of time. I don't even debate Zionists anymore. I will happily debate a faithful Christian. I'll debate people that are lost atheists. I'll debate other Muslims. Even I've had debates between Sunnis and Shia Muslims.
That's fun.
But I can't debate somebody who is so blatantly
lost and hateful. I get what you mean. Yeah. Like and I'll try to, instead of holding you, I'll try to keep it here because I do want to answer your questions. For in the future, I want you to challenge me and ask me questions. I do want to see you again. I did like this. This was lovely. But I wanted to tell you about when it came to Christ and his human nature and his divine nature, the whole point of Jesus was showing his submission. Like, you understand the concept of the love story of the crucifixion. Why would God do that? How could God do that, is what Muslims tend to ask. Well, God is all-knowing and all-powerful. He's unexplainable. We can't explain God's true nature or fully understand God, but from what we understand and know about God, despite the fact he's unexplainable.
Jesus came here with a purpose, correct?
Correct. Yes.
He knew his fate, right? He knew his destiny.
Oh, absolutely. He knew how everything would go. However...
I have a question, though.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you say that.
No, I want you to ask a question.
I want you to add context if you need to.
However, like I'm saying, he came down and he was weak, but with his power, he chose, rather than just being God, being God, being God, he came down in human form as a human with a human nature to talk to people. He didn't have hatred, right? Even he knew Peter would betray him and deny him 3 times. He knew Judas would betray him and turn him in, but he still loved everyone and wanted them to enter his kingdom. What I love about the love story of Christ is that he did not hate anyone. You could have been a prostitute, a criminal. He still wanted his Father to forgive them and to get to know him, because if you get to know Christ, you get to know the Father who he's one with. So I want you to ask your question, and we'll try to end on a note where I try to answer your question to the best of my ability, because you're experienced in this field. So I want to...
Well, so my question is, what all did Jesus say on the cross when he was being crucified?
He said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know. Right?
What else did he say? Right.
I want to get the rest of the verse here, because, sorry, I have read the whole Bible, but sometimes certain verses...
Did he not ask God, why have you forsaken me?
That was foreshadowing. So if you look in the Old Testament, why have you forsaken me was said before Jesus even existed. That was the prophecy that was set up.
But who said it then? Who said it?
So, why have you forsaken me? Who said it before Jesus said it? Because this was said in the...
Let's
I'm pretty sure...
Jesus actually said it, though.
It was in Psalm... It was Psalm 22, verse 1. So roughly
did Jesus actually say that?
So Jesus did say this, but this exact quote was said in Psalm chapter 22, verse 1. That foretold what was going to happen. Even Isaiah, in his book, he predicted that there would be a Messiah and that he would come in the flesh. All of that was a part of the prophecy. It's not because...
Psalm as in the Old Testament?
In the Old Testament and in the New Testament. In Psalm chapter 22, verse 1, why have you forsaken me? That, my God, why have you forsaken me? What's up?
Those are Jesus' words, though.
It is Jesus' words, but those words did come 1,000 years at least before he said it.
So why would he say that, though?
If
he knew his destiny, if he knew his fate, then why would he ask why?
Well, the reason why he asked why, and not only is a part of the prophecy, I actually wrote a summary of this, and I want to read it to you, because these are specific Bible quotes. Yeah. So, let's see. Why have you forsaken me? Because I wrote this specific one down, and I've kept it in my archive. I want to grab my archive real quick.
And I just want your listeners to know that, guys, as I'm questioning and scrutinizing Christianity, please don't take offense.
No, you want to understand it. There's nothing wrong with that.
This is a healthy debate between Dylan and I. I mean, if Dylan's not getting offended, I hope you guys don't get offended. But I'm not trying to offend. I'm having a healthy debate between a Muslim and Christian. It's good to have these positive exchanges, for sure. There's a lot of quotes in the Bible that Jesus says that makes me question.
No, I understand, because he did it as a way to express his spiritual agony on bearing humanity's sins. So even when Jesus, before he died on the cross, when he was so scared to the point where he was crying out blood, blood came out of the eye, right? And even it signifies him taking...
I don't know. I mean, in Islam we don't believe that. But
you believe that he was taken up, that he wasn't crucified. Yeah, that
Yeah, because why would God? If God wanted to, Jesus spoke against hurting people. He would rather hurt himself than hurt other people, right?
Absolutely, and take on the pain of the world out of his love for us. Yeah.
So then it just I don't think that God would make Jesus go through that kind of suffering, because at that point God realized that Jesus came down, he spread the word, his word got corrupted, and now he's about to die. I don't think God would allow one of his messengers to die. But as a Christian, I understand why you guys believe what you believe. I think and Jesus only could do miracles because God gave him the power to do miracles. So if God could do miracles and give Jesus the power to do miracles, and I don't think God would allow Jesus to suffer on the cross or even make it to the cross. I think God would easily put somebody else in his place that's a lookalike who probably didn't even really feel that pain. And and that's just my kind of. But
Analogy of it.
I'll stop at Islam believes that God wouldn't purposely allow one of his messengers to go through humiliation, to go through agony, to go through torture, to go through maybe a thorn crown and being stabbed with a spear. Like, God wouldn't allow any of his messengers to go through any of that. I mean, look at Abraham and his son. Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son for God, but God at the last moment brought in, a goat or a sheep or whatever,
No, I understand that. But here's why I have in my archive. So in Matthew chapter 27, because I have a whole summary, and I want to break it down and do the best I can. So,
Okay.
And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Now, an important thing is to remember that these words were said, like I said before, in Psalm chapter 22, verse 1.
Who said those words?
Let me make sure. I want to make sure I have the correct author of who, because Isaiah said his part in Psalm chapter 22, verse 1, who said these words. I want to make sure I don't have Jesus Christ quoted this, but who said it before him? Who said before Jesus?
Sorry, that was Psalm.
It was King David. It was King David, Psalm chapter 22, verse 1. I remember now. Okay. So it was roughly 1,000 years before Jesus was crucified. King David said it in Psalm Psalm 22, verse 1. So 3 other parts of this psalm specifically are quoted in the story of his death. So you have verses 1 to 2. This is what the psalm says. Why are you far from saving me from the words of my groaning? O my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. My God, why have you forsaken me? And in verse 7, all who seek me mock me. They make mouths at me. They wag their heads, and those are exact words. They wag their heads, quoted in Matthew chapter 27, verse 39. I'm giving you the sources so that way when I explain it, it makes sense as I go on. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads to show that this psalm is being played out in the specific scene of the death of Christ. So in verse 16 of the psalm, they said, verse 16, they said, they have pierced my hands and feet. And in verse 18, they divide my garments among them, when they strip them. And for my clothing, they cast lots. So the words, my God, why have you forsaken me, are part of the psalm that contains, as it were, a script for Jesus' last hours. So Jesus was quoting the psalm from the hundreds of years before he was born. This was showing that the people that he was prophesied in previous scripture perfectly. So everything that he went through, and now it's hard to believe, why would God send his messenger? You see God as a messenger, and you see it from an Islamic perspective. So as a Christian,
I see Jesus as a messenger. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You see him as just a messenger. We see him as Savior. You guys see him as. Do you see him as a Messiah or no? As one.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I'm making sure. I want to make sure.
We'll happily call Jesus the Messiah. We'll happily call him the Savior. We'll happily call him, a king, King of Kings, even. But
anti-Semites for Christ. Suck it, Ted Cruz.
We can't associate him with God.
No, I understand that.
None of the things that none of the titles that I have given them or everybody gives them associate him with God. As soon as I call him Lord, as soon as I call him God or the Son of God.
Lord is God for Hebrew. I understand why you're saying that.
Yeah, I mean it's blasphemy. But like in John, so I have a couple verses here. In John 8, verse 28. Jesus says, I do nothing of myself, but as the Father taught me, I speak these things. This goes back to, if Jesus was all-knowing, why would he make
Why would he need the Father? That's what Muslims
why would he need to be taught?
Well, that's the thing. Everything his Father does, he even said in another verse that he can do. Right?
Yeah, because he says, I do nothing of myself.
Because I understand that, but he's one with the Father, hence the Trinitarian belief. So
why did he say, I do nothing of my God?
Well, he does nothing of himself because he's one with the Father. He is not alone. So the concept of the Trinity is how we believe.
But on the cross, he said, why have you forsaken? So like he's saying in the, he's saying, my God, my God, my God. He's not saying me.
He's not saying my Father or me. I understand what you're
He's
saying.
not saying Father. He's also not saying, yo,
Yeah.
the me up there.
Yeah.
You know? He's saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's not, why have you up there, why have the God version of me forsaken the human version of me, right? So if we're going to quote Jesus, then we have to look at these words a little more carefully.
Yeah.
Because we just blow through it and read the verse like, well, there he says, my God, why have you forsaken? Well, okay, but you know what I mean? Like, why is he choosing the articulation? Why not articulate? Why not just come out and say, look, I am the Son of God and I am God himself. Okay, why not just come out and say that? Why are we not taking Jesus's words for face value, but we are taking the words of men who either quote or paraphrase Jesus as gospel? Why are we doing that? And by the way, decades to centuries later,
after hundreds of years, I understand what you're saying. And, you know, rather than you say, hey, this is supposed to be Jesus' testimony, why is it from Jesus himself? Jesus did trust scribes and his apostles and disciples that were with him. However, does the perspective sound different from each of the apostles? I absolutely agree. You know, like when you look at the Gospels, some of them sound different from others. But the reason why he had four authors.
Earlier when we talked about Paul.
We talked about Paul, yeah.
What he says completely contradicts the Gospels, right? If you look at what Paul says, it's contradictory to all four Gospels. So we're not just talking about a man who basically kind of hijacked what Jesus was doing, but then his own testimonies didn't line up with the testimonies of other people, you know. And then it goes back to, listen, bro, if you and I came up with this amazing idea of God and we present it to people, right? Imagine what our word would turn into 350 years later by people who never met us, never knew us, never heard us speak. Imagine.
You'll sound crazy. No, I understand what you're saying.
No. It wouldn't just sound crazy, but imagine how distorted it would sound. Imagine how many add-ins and takeouts it would have, right? If you said something and I said, look, I got Dylan saying this thing in April 24th of 2026, 400 years later, that turns into something completely different. How do we verify all that? So again, I'm saying all this because I'm trying to give you the perspective
to think
of a
critically,
Muslim looking into Christianity.
No, I understand that.
And trying to ask questions and figure out, like, how does all this make sense? You know, and I want you to do the same thing with Islam. Maybe not on this one, but on the next one, I will happily let you grill me, bro. Come prepared. Ask me about Sharia. Ask me about women. Ask me about Prophet Muhammad marrying Aisha. Ask me whatever you want, bro. I want you to grill me because I feel like I've been kind of grilling you a little bit.
No, I understand. It prepares me and it makes me think there's a lot of things I want to say, but with the time I have and with you, so I'll end it off with this. So specifically when it came to Psalm 22, verse 1, Christ was praying the psalm during the last moments of his death. Not only was it a prophecy that was said 1,000 years before he was crucified, but he has fulfilled what was written by the prophets in saying that. They said that God would come as man and that, you know,
But I thought Jesus brought the new laws with him.
Jesus did bring the new laws with him. He is the new covenant, the new Adam, after when he shed blood, right? But the Lamb of God, and the reason why Jesus is called that is because in Hebrew culture, the ancient Israelites would sacrifice a lamb. The shedding of its blood would represent the forgiving of sins. Jesus was the lamb, not a lamb, which is why that final covenant was shed in his blood.
So then what about the verse where, what is the verse where basically let's see here. Let me just put this in. I'll find it before I make a fool of myself.
No, it's all good. Take your time.
Because we were just now talking about the laws, right? So Jesus is bringing the new law.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to read you a verse, and then you can tell me what you think about this. Here we go. Matthew 5:17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. So in one kind of like earlier you said he came to change the law, he brought the new word. But here we have Matthew saying that, and I think he's speaking for Jesus, do not think that I have come to abolish the law. So wouldn't we uphold all the laws of the Old Testament?
No, I understand what you're saying. And this goes into the argument where Muslims will say, hey, as a Christian, you shouldn't be eating pork then. Because that's where they usually go for. But that's the thing there, because Jesus said not to judge a brother by what he eats. Now, is he here to change the law of the land? No. He is here because he has given us and gifted us the ability of free will. Now, with that free will, it is up to us.
God gave us that ability far before Jesus did.
I agree that the Father did do that. However,
why do you think Adam and Eve got kicked out of
the Garden of Eden? They used free will, obviously, yeah. But with Christ, he, as the new coming, we had the ability, or the disciples and other people in the villages had the ability to talk to God up front. They have the choice either to work with the Son, accept the Son, and repent, and have him as a gateway to the Father, to be with the Father in heaven, or they have the choice to follow desires of flesh and to push him away. Did Jesus disagree with how the Jews saw his Father and broke away from his Father? No. Jesus said to respect the law of the land. He's not here to change the law of the land. However...
That's not what it says.
No, but let me explain it. Hold up.
Oh, okay.
Because, yes, we should respect the law of the land. However, Jesus, when it came to morals, he had a problem when the law was unjust. And I'm about to pull up another verse that'll explain this. Because Jesus said during the Sabbath, remember, there were rules. There was a part where, hey, you're not supposed to do this on the Sabbath, eat on the Sabbath. But what did Jesus say? He corrected them. He said, well, David, when he was walking the fields, he ate, right? So I'm going to explain this part because about tradition, Jesus said this about tradition, that traditions must never supersede or nullify the commandments of God. And that's the problem. People were making excuses like now, like you've even said, the Zios.
Isn't that a contradiction, though?
Hold on, wait, but let me explain it. Yeah. Okay. Because that's like Jews saying, hey, I'm God's chosen people. But in saying that, they supersede and nullify their own commandments. They're contradicting themselves by saying that. Jesus came to correct it. He didn't say to get rid of the laws. Jesus was by the book. He wanted you to follow the laws. The problem is people say they're following the laws, but they're not really following the laws. They're saying that for their own benefit and making scapegoats, kind of like what Israelis do now. The Israelites were making scapegoats. They weren't following the rules. Jesus kept the rules in place. Jesus had law and order. Jesus was telling them how it was and how his Father felt, and that he was disappointed on how they were treating each other, how they were hurting each other. Jesus disagreed, even a part when Jesus said, not only that, about eating on the Sabbath, because here's a good example. I not only told you about the tax collectors, but Jesus asserted that he was the Lord of the Sabbath, emphasizing mercy over ritual. So what did he mean by that? He taught that the Sabbath was made for human benefit, not as a rigid restriction, arguing that meeting human needs takes precedence over traditional prohibitions. There are moments where tradition can be foolish and get in the way of your life. For example, you can't say, hey, I'm God's chosen people, but you ignore everything God says. That's what the Israelites were doing, and that's what we see with Zionists today. So Jesus came to correct that, if that makes sense, if I explain that the best way.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, like hearing you say it, because again, I haven't memorized the Bible, and there's a lot of verses in the Bible that
it's like, whoa, I'm on board. Whoa, I get what you mean.
Well, because like if Matthew's saying that Jesus said that do not think I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, but I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Not an iota, not a dot. The old law says, do not consume pork, do not drink alcohol, right?
Yeah.
Now, Jesus never consumed pork and he didn't drink
Absolutely.
alcohol. Now, he could say, well, he turned water into wine or whatever, and he drank. But as a Muslim, I don't believe that. So
no, I understand that.
I'm kind of bringing in
so let's put you in a survival perspective. If you had to survive, your family's dying and being starved to death, right? And pork is all that was available. Would you eat pork to survive?
No.
No, you'd starve.
I'd rather die a clean and pure Muslim.
All right.
And let God judge me after my death. Than just eat pork because.
No, I understand what you're saying. I respect you for.
Right? It goes back to Abraham. Abraham was ready to fulfill God's commandment. He said, "Kill your son." Right?
Yeah, he was ready to do it.
And he got to hear, didn't he? He
was right there, and then the angels said, "Stop." They were testing his loyalty. Right. Yes, Abraham was devout. As a Muslim, you should be devout, and as a Christian, you should be devout. But I said, remember.
Would you?
Yes, of course, I would do what God says. You know what I mean? He is God.
No. I'm saying if you were in that scenario where you had to sin or die for survival, would you sin or would you die?
I'd die. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, you and your family, right? Because remember, I brought your family into that when I said that earlier. Would you let your family die with you?
Noah didn't bring his whole family onto the ark.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, like, think about this. Be realistic in this situation. You and your family are dying, and that's all you had to eat in that situation.
Well, it's not realistic, though, is it, Dylan?
I know it's not realistic, but pretend.
If there's pigs, there's vegetation. Because what do the pigs eat? I'd rather eat the grass the pigs are eating.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. But I'm saying I'm making it up. It's not realistic. Right. That's the point.
It's just pigs.
It's just making shit up. It's just an island of pigs. Pigtopia, yeah. But
no, I'd probably make companionship with those pigs and probably talk to them, kind of like.
You make a little pig tribe and just have them kill people for you.
I give them all names. I mean, y'all are cool, and I like talking to you because I'm going crazy on this island. But I'm not gonna eat you Now you could say, well, would you let your kids suffer and not eat?
And your wife and whoever, and let's see.
You know, and it's like that's when faith comes into play because it's out of my hands at this point. God has put me in this position, so now I'm praying to God, like, give me an answer here, because do you want me to consume this swine, or do you want me to stay faithful
to you? And your body is a temple and made by God. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a hard one, man. That's a hard one you threw.
Because it's hard because you have to remember, this is, I don't know if you have sons or daughters or what.
2 sons, 2 daughters.
Yeah, so to put yourself in that scenario, it's easy to say now, but when that happens, you know what I mean? I'm not saying it'll happen, God forbid. I'm not saying you're going to be in an island of pigs.
Right.
But if it happens, you don't know how you'd react. You couldn't imagine yourself in that situation, right?
Right.
Because even Jesus, when he said at the time when Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, his disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, always the Pharisees causing problems, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he had his companions ate the consecrated bread, which is not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on the Sabbath day in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known that these words mean, I mean, desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath." Now again, they take things out of context, and that's why there was Jesus, right? They had their laws, but they took them out of context. But what about when David was here, right? He was hungry, my disciples were starving, so they ate. Are there exceptions for when things happen, right? And moments where there are human needs, where you were starving, you were dying, and you must make sacrifices to help others? Yes, I'm not saying to break the laws of God. However,
in dire situations.
In dire situations, right? Because even Jesus himself, remember, he had diadems and figures of speech. You don't take every literal thing he says seriously. However, there's a philosophical aspect to Jesus, right? When he explains certain things, yeah.
Did Jesus say that you're just allowed to eat pork even if you have chicken and sheep?
Jesus didn't say you're allowed to eat pork or you're allowed to eat chicken, you're allowed to do that. However,
so now
we're getting into deep waters here, deep territory, which is where we need to be, which is hence where this came to, right?
Gray areas.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like, you know, when I got brought up into Islam and as a Muslim reading the Quran, praying, it was hard for me to find gray areas in the Quran.
I understand.
But then when I got a little bit older and I got really curious about religion and Christianity, and I looked into the Bible, there is a lot of gray areas in the Bible. There is contradictions. It was very confusing.
Yeah.
Can I eat swine? Can I not eat swine? Is Jesus saying that the Father is greater than I, or is he saying that one is God, one that is God, and your Father and I are one and the same? Like, what? because you got different people saying different things, and the Bible is a lot of paraphrasing. The Bible is a
Yeah,
lot of
and D's figures of speech.
He said, this person said according to, you know, it's hard for Muslims to get behind the Bible because there's so many people involved in the Bible, bro.
So much going on.
Whereas
What's not going
Quran,
on? Yeah, I get it.
Whereas with the Quran, it was revealed to one man for 23 years and one man alone.
And this followed through, and this happened. Plain and simple.
And his closest disciples or followers, like he didn't have disciples, but we call them followers. His greatest companions were the ones that put all of those together and made sure that they stayed together, right?
Yeah.
How can a man in the desert know about, Jesus? It's been scientifically proven that Prophet Muhammad had no, he knew about Jesus, sorry, but how did he know he didn't have any access to Christian scriptures?
No, I understand that. In his time period,
And so, like, I'm kind of telling you, like, I'm not comparing the Bible and the Quran, but I'm saying that
from an Islamic perspective,
when we talk about how they came about in very two different ways. One, it was one man involved between him and God and an angel, but the other one was a man who got the revelations that he got from God, but then a series of men and popes and kings. Right, because even if we get past the 4th century, we got King James, we got all these other...
The Ethiopian Bible, I understand what you're saying.
When we got the whole Zionist version of the Bible, the Schofield Bible, I mean...
Well, the Schofield Bible, I'll explain it here. Well, I believe in the scriptures that were in Aramaic, Ancient Hebrew, and Koine Greek. Not the modern Hebrew, right? That's pieces of Yiddish and Aramaic that Zionists copied off later and made up, right? I believe in, because when I look at a modern Bible today translated in English, I look at that compared to the 73 books of the Bible and what came after the Apocrypha. I look at those translated books, 95 to 99% of those scriptures are exactly identical. Now, the only errors are, yes, there's going to be spelling because Aramaic is an overdramatic language. So from English, when it comes over, it'll look different. Same thing with Koine Greek, same thing with Ancient Hebrew. Modern Hebrew is different. Right, what Jews speak today is not what the Israelites spoke, and Palestinians spoke Aramaic and all that other type of Semitic languages. So what I'd say to that is that I trust what came from the Aramaic, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Nothing else.
How did Jesus say God in Aramaic?
Well, in Aramaic, hold on, how to say? Oh, you're asking how to say God specifically in Aramaic, because Aramaic and Arabic and Hellenized version and Quranic Arabic are different languages. How to say God in Aramaic? He said Alaha or Ilaha. Yeah, with A-L-A-H-A? E-L-A-H-A? Yeah.
Yeah, Alaha.
Ilaha.
How did Jesus greet people? In English, how did he greet people? What did it translate to? Because didn't Jesus say, peace be upon you?
Let's take a look.
When he greeted people?
Jesus.
And how did he say, peace be upon you in Aramaic?
He greeted people in Aramaic. Okay, let's see. Based on historical results, Talitha Kum or Kumi Ifatha, found in Mark. This translates to be opened. Jesus uses to restore hearing. Jesus used his phrase to deceased child back to life, to greet people. I'm looking up right now because I want to get an accurate translation. Jesus used Aramaic, the everyday life language of Galilee and Judea. He often used the term Abba, Father. The blessed meaning, Tebvehun in Aramaic, the word for blessed as used in the Beatitudes, Tebvehun. El Maskena I Brook. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Blessed is the one. Actually, hold on. Let's see how he says blessed is the one in Aramaic, who gets by the right side of other people. In Aramaic. All right, so blessed is the one who gets right on the other side of other people is a modern interpretation of blessed are the merciful. So when Jesus said blessed are the merciful, and my bad to really drag it out. I know you're a busy man. I'm trying to figure out.
It's okay. I mean, I'm giving you as much time as you're giving me. But I mean, I can tell you.
Certain things
in Aramaic, Jesus said Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleikun, Shalom Aleika, depending on who you ask, right? Shalom Aleik, Shalom Aleika. And he said Allaha, Allaha in Aramaic. Aramaic is closely resembling, Arabic, right? Arabic kind of came from Aramaic.
God, it's good in Aramaic.
What I want to finish this off with.
Allah Hataba. Yeah, that's God is good. Allah Hataba in Aramaic. Yeah.
And so if God was going around saying Allah, 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 right? And we say Allah, 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 right?
Yeah.
I just want to tell your audience that next time you decide to insult Allah, just remember that you're insulting the very word that
the very
Jesus
Arab Christians that follow the same God you do.
God.
And, yeah.
So in essence, you're insulting Jesus. And if you believe he's God, then you're insulting God. And when you look at what Jesus says in Aramaic, how he talks, and he says, "Peace be upon you." This is why Muslims say "Salaam alaikum" every time we see somebody. "Walaikum assalam," and on to you, right? Jesus said the same thing. He would either say "Assalamu alaikum," or in this case, Allah
Hataba.
Shalom aleika, right? Or people would say, say "Shalom alaikum" back to you. So there's a lot of similarities between the languages that Jesus actually spoke. Jesus never spoke Greek. Jesus never spoke Hebrew. He was aware of Hebrew, but
of ancient Hebrew, but mainly spoke Aramaic. Yeah, he was Aramean ancestors. Yeah,
right. So it's hard for us to sit there and be like, "Well, the Bible says." Well, it's like when you find an Aramaic Bible, then let's talk, because I'm interested, just like you, Dylan, because I heard what you said earlier. You want to know what Jesus said in Aramaic.
Yeah,
I do too. Why shouldn't we? That's his original language. We don't want
300 years later, we want what the Dead Sea Scrolls says.
We don't want Hebrew to Greek to English. We don't want that.
We want the Aramaic straight from the source of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But here's what I'm gonna leave you with, bro. I'm gonna leave you with this, because give me 1 second. I'm gonna find this for you, but I want you to go read it and dig into it a little bit. Okay, this is the Old Testament verse. I should really start memorizing these a little bit
That's
more.
right, yeah.
The Old Testament verse that mentions...
Yeah, because I found the earlier ones about the pork ones. Let not him that eateth despise him that eateth not, and let not him that eateth not judge him that eateth, for God hath received him. And that was Romans chapter 14, verse 3. And there was Matthew 15, verse 11, where Jesus declares, "It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles the person, but what comes out of the mouth." Right? The words and actions. It's not the food that makes you unclean, but what comes out of you, not what goes in you. So.
Well, we in Islam
obviously understand pork has parasites. I understand it's an unclean food.
Very unclean animal.
Yeah.
I think Christians are also not supposed to eat animals that have split hooves, right? Muslims are not supposed to eat animals that have split hooves, right?
Yeah.
But here's the Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 16. I'm going to read it to you.
Yeah.
And I want you to, because you obviously have a passion for Aramaic, I respect that. I want you to then go and find out, also look it up in Hebrew, because that'll give you some more context. So, Song of Solomon 5:16 says, "His mouth is most sweet, yea, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem." Now, that's just Song of Solomon 5:16.
Yeah.
Now, in English, you're like, well, his mouth is most sweet. Yeah, he is altogether lovely. Okay, that sounds like plain English. But we have to go back to the Aramaic saying and what it actually means, because altogether lovely is also the praised one. And we know that the word Muhammad, or the name Muhammad, means the praised one, right? So when we say that Prophet Muhammad was prophesied in the Old Testament, and we also as Muslims believe that there is parts of the Old Testament that are also corrupt, but when we look at Prophet Muhammad, and I would tell you just to search for Prophet Muhammad in the Old Testament, not just this one, Song of Solomon, but also in the verse where they talk about Becca, the Valley of Becca. Right? Have you heard of the Valley of Becca?
No, I have. Yeah, I've studied all the poetry of Solomon, because there's a lot of poetry and romance. So, which is why.
So Becca is Mecca, is modern day Mecca, and back then it was called Becca, right? So in the Old Testament, there's little crumbs that hint towards Islam coming, towards the Prophet Muhammad coming towards even the pilgrimage to the Hajj. Like if the Old Testament talks about the 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 actual Hajj, not the pilgrimage, but it also talks about where they're going. They're going to one of the oldest houses, or the first house of God. That's why all Muslims face in that direction. I would tell you to, whether you use a ChatGPT or a Claude or whatever, or whether you do old school research, to go specifically look in the Old Testament for hints of Prophet Muhammad and Islam. And then just come to your, like, that's something I would love to chat with you about next time.
Yeah, we definitely will, yeah.
Your findings.
Yeah, I try to answer my questions, your questions to the best of my ability. I apologize, things didn't make sense.
Well, we're both over here looking at our phones because we're both getting stumped.
Yeah, because I know the verses. The issue is I have archives because I have Muslims ask me the same questions. So I wrote little notes and key summaries to describe the verse because there's so much context that goes into it based on the time 100%. Period. It's a diadem. Jesus had figures of speech. Jesus meant this specifically. This is the old law because this is what the ancient Hebrews followed when it came to pork. This is how Christians do this now because of the covenant. The constant covenant changes. Jews aren't the chosen people of God because when they reject the Son, they reject the Father. Hence, when I was explaining the concept of being one earlier. So yeah, Jews, as a Christian, you can't believe they're God's chosen. It just goes against everything the Bible and even Jesus stood for. So yeah, especially when you read the Talmud. But yeah, man.
Especially when you need to read the Talmud.
Oh, especially.
We know the Talmud is rabbinic. Like it's rabbinic.
Rabbinic Judaism, 2nd century.
Right. Yeah. These are very obviously corrupt, evil men that wrote this.
And because there are a lot of verses I do want to bring up to you in the future.
Zionists refer to the Talmud. Zionists don't refer to the Torah.
Yeah, they refer to Talmud. Right? Yeah.
So that should tell us something about Zionists.
And then when they lie and say it's debates, it's not just debates. There's sets of rules in rabbinic Judaism, right? So, but yeah, there are verses I do want to bring up from the Quran and the Hadiths. I will talk about when it comes to authenticity of Scripture, Torah and Injil. In the future, I'll probably ask you about how Muslims feel because you guys will say it's corrupted, but then you will say there's like an old Torah and a gospel that's different from the one now. Is that what you guys believe, that there's an older one?
As far as the Old Testament?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we just believe that the book that we called the Torah was given to Moses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we believe that Moses received the original Torah, but then
you believe it was changed and corrupted. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah, because there's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Those are the parts of the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, the Torah, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the New.
Dude, we should definitely. So this is what I'll do.
Yeah.
You pick some verses in the Quran, or
I'll also pick Hadiths as well. Hadiths and Quran. I'll ask you questions.
I'll bring some more questions. This time, maybe I'll go to the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And dude, we'll just continue, man, because I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll ask questions about Uthman because Muslims and Christians go back and forth and say, oh, there are many Bibles. Oh, what about the Hafs version, the Dr. Ghali version of the Quran? We'll go back and forth and we'll talk about it.
I can give you a quick answer, but we can dive into it.
Yeah, we gotta savor the flavor though. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because I took you for 2 hours. You know what I mean?
It's fun when we're talking about things we're passionate about because time flies. But you're right, bro. We've been on here for a minute. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate your open-mindedness. And I'm not trying to insult Christians.
No, you're questioning me. And if anything, I'll go deeper into my faith and be stronger in the end. So, it's good to have a Muslim homie there.
That's it. And that's why Muslims are so much closer to their faith now because of all the hate we get. All this hate and Islamophobia, it just pushes us closer to our faith.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it doesn't faze us whatsoever. But looking forward to the next one, man. Let me know again how I can help you distribute this. Like if you clip it or
anything helps. I hope we could work on more projects in the future. I could seem crude, but God bless you, man. Have a good one.